Chapter 802. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are available here. In fact, even if Gu Jiao didn't say what happened in the dream, Xiao Hang also understood that the emperor can't fall into the hands of Han clan. They already had a falling out with the Han clan. The Han clan used the emperor's power to deal with them first. Gu Jiao and Xiao Hang returned to the state preceptor's hall in the Duke Fu's carriage. When Shangguan Yen heard that the emperor was plotted against by imperial concubine Han, she didn't have any reaction. When she heard that the emperor in the imperial court was a fake, she didn't have much reaction. But when she heard Gu Jiao ask her where the dog hole in the cold palace was, she suddenly exploded. "What do you want to do?" Gu Jiao truthfully said, "I want to snatch the emperor." Shangguan Yan's face sank. "No. It's too dangerous." She firmly refused to sacrifice her own daughter-in-law's life for a scum father who killed her mother's entire family. In the beginning, he wanted to marry the Han clan. He wanted to raise the 10 great clans to encircle and suppress the Xian Yuan clan. But now, did he suffer a backlash? Xiao Hang said, "But, if the fake emperor abolished Jiao Jiao, it's also very dangerous." Shangguan Yen frowned. With Han clan's temperament, it's indeed possible for her to do such a thing. The fake emperor has just ascended the throne. Outsiders can't see the clues, but they themselves will feel a little guilty. Therefore, it's unlikely for them to do things that are very different from their original temperament. For example, they will touch her and Shangguan Qing. It's hard to say about others. Shangguan Yen asked her son to bring a pen and paper. She drew a map of the cold palace for Gu Jiao. Gu Chengfeng went there last time, but he was outside the dog hole and didn't go in. After you go in from here, you have to go around Imperial Concubine Wan's territory to reach Han clan's courtyard. But, did she really hide the emperor in the cold palace? Are you sure? The news little Nine heard, it can't be false. Gu Jiao said without changing her expression. Oh, that bird. Shangguan Yen no longer doubted. Xiao Heng looked deeply at Gu Jiao but did not expose her. After dark, Gu Jiao and Gu Chengfeng changed into night clothes, put on masks, and went to the cold palace under the cover of the night. Gu Chengfeng easily found the dog hole from last time. Gu Jiao was still wondering why Gu Chengfeng didn't directly take Shangguan Yen to climb over the wall since his qinggong was so good. But when she came to the corner of the wall, she saw the seemingly invisible silk thread and understood. Gu Chengfeng whispered, "The silk of the snowfield silkworm is incomparably sharp. If you accidentally bump into it, you'll be cut into pieces. I don't know how high the highest silk is. I'm afraid that I won't be able to see it and will only have half of my body left when I fly over. Looks like we can only drill." Gu Jiao said. "I'll go over first." Gu Jiao crawled over after making sure there was no danger before letting Gu Chengfeng crawl over as well. The two stood up and brushed off the dust on their bodies. Gu Chengfeng said, "By the way, the king should know that Shangguan Yen likes to drill this dog hole, but he didn't fill it up and left it for Shangguan Yen to go out and play? He loves her so much, why did he hurt her in the first place?" Gu Jiao lightly said, "You don't have to guess a man's mind." Gu Chengfeng looked around and said to Gu Jiao, "That master must be guarding Han Shi's side. I'll lead him away in a while. You go and rescue the king." Gu Jiao said, "Can you lead him away?" Gu Chengfeng patted his small chest. "I'm Zhao country's #1 thief, Fei Shuang. Don't think that just because my martial arts are not as good as yours, I'm not as good as you in other aspects. You should learn it well and watch how I lure him away." Now that there was no other way, Gu Jiao thought for a moment and seriously said, "You're not allowed to fight with him." Gu Chengfeng laughed and said, "Don't worry, I'm a thief, not a robber. I won't fight with people. Escaping is my strength. But I'll say the ugly words first. If that person is really as powerful as you described, I may not be able to hold on for long. An incense stick. You only have an incense stick's worth of time." Gu Jiao nodded her head. "I know. Gu Chengfeng turned around and left. Gu Chengfeng, be careful. Gu Jiao called him, if you're killed by him, I won't avenge you. Gu Chengfeng curled his lips. Say, you have no conscience. Gu Chengfeng used his qinggong to fly toward Han She's courtyard. Gu Jiao quietly followed and closely watched the movements in the night. To be honest, she was a little unsure. And Han was after all a very powerful expert. Would he really fall for Gu Chengfeng's trick so easily? Wouldn't he have guessed that someone who didn't even dare to fight with him was trying to lure the tiger away from the mountain? Even if Han couldn't guess it, with Han She's palace scheming mind, would she fall for it? Han She wouldn't fall for it so easily. But Gu Chengfeng's luck was not bad. Han She coincidentally went to the cellar to visit the monarch. And Han guarded the courtyard alone. Gu Chengfeng concealed his aura. After coming to the Yan kingdom, not only did Gu Chongqing and Gu Jiao increase their strength, but Gu Chengfeng also trained his qinggong to be stronger than before after getting injured and fighting. He silently waited for his chance. Gu Jiao's prediction was right. An expert like an Han wouldn't easily fall for the trick of luring him away, unless he wanted to kill Gu Chengfeng. Gu Chengfeng hid in the darkness for nearly a quarter of an hour. Suddenly, an Han turned and went to the toilet. Now's the time. An Han unbuckled his belt. At this moment, one's vigilance would be greatly lowered. Gu Chengfeng suddenly shot out 3 plum blossom darts. F*CKU, Master and Han. Go be an eunuch and Han. Gu Chengfeng had been secretly learning from Mistress Nan these days. And Han's hair stood on end as he felt a strong murderous aura. His muscles tensed up as he made a defensive response in a critical moment. Then he couldn't shout, and Han. No way, the sneak attack didn't succeed. He can even dodge like that, what kind of pervert is he? Ah! And Han charged towards Gu Chengfeng. Gu Chengfeng broke into a run. Damn it, how could he be so fast? Stupid girl, I can't hold on for more than half an hour, at most half an hour. Gu Jiao saw 2 figures flying into the night from behind the tree. She didn't dare to delay and quickly ran to Han She's courtyard. At this moment, Han She was holding an oil lamp in the cellar. Although it was a cellar, it still had all the furniture. It was just a bit simple and crude, looking more like a commoner's house. And the 2 of them looked like a couple from the commoners. The monarch had been drugged with bone-softening powder and was lying weakly on the simple bed. Han She sat on a stool beside the bed and looked at him with a smile that wasn't a smile. Your Majesty, don't blame this concubine. This concubine already said that you forced this concubine. The monarch looked at her coldly. This was the first time Han She had drugged the monarch with bone-softening powder. The dosage was a bit too much, causing the monarch to not only be unable to move, even his throat was numb. Han She smiled and said, Your Majesty, don't worry. This concubine won't kill you. Han She. The monarch trembled as he bit out these 2 words. He never expected that this vicious woman would dare to imprison the Son of Heaven. This was even more shocking than the Xian Yuan family's rebellion. In any case, the Xian Yuan family had the backbone and the strength. But Han She was just a concubine in the harem. With the Son of Heaven missing, did she really think that no one would find out? As if she could see the mockery in the monarch's eyes, Han She faintly smiled and said, Your Majesty, don't worry. No one will know where you went. In fact, no one will find out that you went missing. The monarch looked at her with a face full of caution and confusion. Han She smiled meaningfully and said, Last night, Your Majesty came to this concubine's cold palace to sit for a while before returning. This morning, you went to court on time. In the afternoon, you gathered the military officials to discuss important matters. At night, you went to your own palace to read memorials for 2 hours. The monarch's expression changed. He stuttered. You? Han She's lips curled into a mocking smile. Yes, this concubine found someone to replace Your Majesty. Your Majesty didn't expect this, right? This concubine called Your Majesty to the cold palace to give Your Majesty one last chance. If Your Majesty had only said that you believed in me, I wouldn't have done it. In truth, I also considered giving your majesty a goo or drug, but those things will harm the body. This concubine's heart aches for your majesty and can't bear for your majesty to suffer. The monarch's heart was filled with disgust. Why didn't he find out earlier that this poisonous woman was a lunatic? Han She took in the monarch's disgust. Her smile disappeared and she coldly said, Your Majesty, no matter how much you hate this concubine, no one will come to save your Majesty. Your Majesty, take care of yourself. After saying this, she stood up and left with a cold face. Not long after she left, a small figure quietly flashed into the cellar. The monarch looked at the person who suddenly approached the bed with vigilance. Just as he was about to speak, Gu Jiao knocked him out with a stick. Monarch. Then, Gu Jiao directly carried him on her shoulder and fled with a whoosh. Digression. Do you still have a monthly ticket? Vote for Jiao Jiao. The newest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are read for free. Novels that can't be found online are all here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_826/1061791149. HTML Genius remembers this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile reading website, m. zhbqg.com. Chapter 803. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found online are all available here. It was a dark and windy night. Gu Chengfeng was being chased by an Hun. He knew that an Hun was powerful, but he wasn't weak either. Why was he getting closer and closer? It was already abnormal that he was getting closer and closer. Under normal circumstances, no one could run more than 10 feet away from an Hun, but Gu Chengfeng had already circled around the palace. But he couldn't hold on any longer. He was about to smoke. Forget it. Let's get out of the palace first. Gu Chengfeng jumped out of the main entrance of the harem and ran in the direction of the exit. An Hun chased after him relentlessly. Gu Chengfeng didn't expect to get rid of him now. If he could lure him out of the palace in the opposite direction, he could buy more time for that girl. Gu Chengfeng brought out his reincarnated energy and ran amok in the night. Finally, he leaped up and stepped through the last gate of the outer court. At this moment, an Hun was less than 20 feet away from him. Oh no, I can't hold on any longer. Please don't get caught. My martial arts skills are not enough to even fill the gaps between an Hun's teeth. However, there was a saying in the world, what you fear will happen. Just as Gu Chengfeng gritted his teeth and was about to break through his limit, an Hun came behind him and grabbed his collar with his bone-cold hand. Gu Chengfeng's heart skipped a beat. He was someone who had experienced the Battle of Yuegu City. He had fought with the Chen army for 5 days and 5 nights, but he had never felt that he had really stepped into the palace of the King of Hell. It was as if the hand that grabbed him wasn't a death warrior's hand, but the ghost claw of the King of Hell. I can't die, I can't die. I haven't lived long enough. I can only use my last move. The seemingly complicated and numerous thoughts flashed through his mind in an instant. With a swish, he took out something from his bosom. An Hun thought that he was going to assassinate him with a hidden weapon. Who would have thought that through the other party's back, he saw the other party use something to wipe his mouth? What move is this? The next second, Gu Chengfeng turned his head and pouted his red lips. He leaned towards an Hun affectionately. Trojan horse, an Hun, F*CK. An Hun's breath stagnated, and his meridians started to circulate in reverse. The true qi in his dantian was extinguished as if a bucket of ice water had been poured on it. His breath was blocked, and he fell down with a clatter. In the process of falling, he threw Gu blazing hot lips Chengfeng away in disgust and horror. The all-powerful Lord and Hun had never been so frightened before. What kind of shameless opponent was this? Back in the day, he was also a very decent little wind, but the group of people in the courtyard— no, not to mention the people, even the horses were not decent. He was influenced by the company he kept. However, an Hun was an Hun after all. Even though his soul had been sent flying by the lightning, he still relied on his strong instinct to recover his inner energy the moment he landed. He struck the ground with his palm and borrowed the force to do a somersault in the air before landing firmly on the ground. As for Gu Changfeng, he borrowed the force of him throwing him out just now and disappeared with a whoosh. In the night, a certain someone's annoying voice could be heard. "Thank you, Lord and Hun did not chase after him. He knew the force of his throw. If he chased after him, he would be too far away from the palace." He turned and returned to the cold palace. Just as he entered the courtyard of the cold palace, he saw Han Shi angrily walking towards him. "Where did you go just now?" "The king was taken away by someone." And Han said calmly, "I know, I will get him back." After Gu Jiao carried the king out of Han Shi's courtyard, she went straight to the dog hole that led to the outside of the palace. As the king was knocked unconscious, he could not drill the hole himself, so Gu Jiao could only stuff him in. Who knew that the king's body would get fat and he would be stuck in the dog hole? Gu Jiao frowned seriously and kicked his dragon head, kicking him over without hesitation. After that, Gu Jiao crawled over herself. She did not know how long Gu Changfeng could delay, but it was best that she did not waste any time. She carried the king and sprinted towards the planned location. There, the Black Wind King was already in place. However, things did not go as she wished. Before she could run a mile, an Hun caught up with her. She saw with her own eyes that an Hun used his sword to cut open the snow silk on the wall and jumped over elegantly. He was indeed an expert. His skills were amazing. Gu Jiao could not escape from an Hun alone. Now that she had to carry the king, she was no match for an Hun. What was Gu Changfeng doing? Had it really been a quarter of an hour? Gu Changfeng. It was clearly the king who was stuck in the dog hole for half a day. Gu Jiao felt that she was doomed. An Hun's murderous aura was approaching her quickly. However, because she was carrying the king, an Hun did not kill her. He only wanted to snatch the king back. Gu Jiao threw out 3 black fire pearls. An Hun's eyes narrowed. He paused in mid-air and turned around to avoid the pearls. He lightly tapped his foot and landed on a tree. The black fire pearls landed on the ground and made a series of explosive sounds. Gu Jiao felt a toothache. Shouldn't an expert like you catch hidden weapons with your bare hands? Why are you dodging? An Hun pulled out a long vine from the tree and threw it at Gu Jiao. The long vine wrapped around Gu Jiao's slender waist. Gu Jiao was pulled over by a strong force. She had 2 choices. She could either surrender and be captured by an Hun together with the monarch, or she could throw the monarch down. An Hun would abandon her to save the monarch and she would take the opportunity to escape. She did not want to die. However, she would not give up the king that she had already captured. She immediately pressed down on the dagger at her waist. However, before she could pull it out, an Hun slapped the dagger out of her hand. This guy! In the nick of time, a figure suddenly appeared from the side and cut the long vine in half. Gu Jiao and the king fell to the ground. The person holding the sword blocked in front of the two and said through the veil, "You guys leave first." It was Yi Qing's voice. Gu Jiao looked at Yi Qing, who was dressed in black, and then looked at the 4 men of sacrifice that came with Yi Qing. She roughly understood that it was the state teacher's palace that made their move. "Be careful," Gu Jiao reminded. "I will." Yi Qing flew up with her sword and attacked an Hun together with the 4 men of sacrifice from the Imperial Preceptor Palace. Gu Jiao took the chance to grab the king, who had fallen to the ground, and ran. Behind them came the sound of weapons clashing. The whole street seemed to be filled with killing intent. The eldest disciple of the state teacher's palace and the 4 men of sacrifice were a terrifying force, but to say that they could kill an Hun was still impossible. Set up the formation. Trap him. Under Yi Qing's order, the 5 of them formed a formation and surrounded an Hun. And Hun coldly looked at the five who came out of nowhere and sarcastically curled his lips. You think you can stop me with just the few of you? Yi Qing coldly said, whether I can stop you or not, you'll know once you try. Or are you scared? That's right, you colluded with the deposed concubine and imprisoned the king. You have committed a crime worthy of all 9 generations of your family. If you're willing to surrender, then maybe I'll consider letting you go. And Hun coldly laughed. Stalling for time? Useless. As soon as he finished, and Hun's figure flashed and suddenly appeared in front of Yi Qing. His speed was too fast, to the point that Yi Qing could only see a blur. Before he could react, Yi Qing had already been sent flying by An Hun. And almost at the same time, An Hun used the remaining qi in his body to send the other 4 men of sacrifice flying. An Hun's goal was to take back the king, so he didn't waste too much energy on Yi Qing and the others. Yi Qing fell onto a roof, covered his chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. Damn. He escaped so quickly. Xiao Lulang, you can only rely on yourself from now on. Achoo. Gu Jiao was running just fine with the king on her shoulder, when she suddenly sneezed out of nowhere, stepped on something slippery, and fell flat on her face. No way, right? Was someone talking about her again? Xiao Lulang, this name is poisonous. Gu Jiao got up with a black face. Just as she was about to grab the king and continue running, Gu Chengfeng used his qing gong to catch up. Hey, are you okay? Gu Chengfeng asked her. Gu Jiao, with grass all over her body, shook her messy hair. I'm fine. Yi Qing and them are coming, I don't think they can hold them off for too long. You take the king and leave, we'll split up. Letting Gu Chengfeng lure An Hun away was because only he could do it. Now letting Gu Chengfeng take the king away was also because only he could take him away. What Gu Jiao didn't say was that she sprained her leg from the fall just now. Gu Chengfeng frowned, but you? Gu Jiao took out a bone whistle. Black Wind King will come get me, hurry up and leave. The reason why she didn't use the bone whistle before was because she was worried about exposing her location and attracting the Black Wind King, and Shi Yi attracting An Hun. Now there was no other choice. Gu Chengfeng gritted his teeth. I know what you want to do, but this time I won't listen to you. An Hun wasn't Han Yi. Once he fell into his hands, there was no chance of survival. Gu Chengfeng, with one hand holding onto the king and the other holding onto Gu Jiao, used his qing gong to jump. But right at this moment, An Hun arrived. An Hun squinted his eyes, aimed at Gu Chengfeng's legs, and slashed down. The newest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found on the internet are all here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/1061564662. HTML Genius memorized this site's address. www.zhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 804. This book's newest chapter isn't finished yet. For more interesting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found on the internet are all here. Gu Jiao felt the sharp killing intent and sword chi, and frowned. Watch out. It was already too late to dodge, so Gu Chengfeng clenched his teeth and pushed the two of them towards the roof in front of him. It was better for the sword chi to land on his leg alone than for Gu Jiao to be injured with him. But the expected pain didn't come. On the other side of the roof, a navy blue figure fell from the sky and also sent out a sword chi, protecting Gu Chengfeng, who almost lost his legs. Gu Chengfeng turned around and was instantly dumbfounded. Big brother. Gu Chongqing sent out a palm, and sent him to the roof where Gu Jiao and the king landed. You guys hurry and leave, he lightly said, and vigilantly looked at the black-robed man 2 meters away. Gu Chengfeng was so shocked that he couldn't even close his mouth. Big, big, big. Why is Big Brother here? Wasn't he lying in the ICU this whole time? When did he wake up? How did he know what he was doing tonight? Gu Jiao frowned, as if she was also a bit confused, but not as confused as Gu Chengfeng, or maybe it was because she was a bit more calm. It had been almost a month since Gu Chongqing was injured. Although his body's stats were gradually stabilizing, he still hadn't woken up in front of her. The state teacher also said that he hadn't woken up. Did he just wake up? Then thinking of Yi Qing's arrival, Gu Jiao guessed that the state teacher had somehow found out about her plan to break into the Cold Palace, so he arranged for Yi Qing to come help her, while also having Gu Chongqing, who had woken up, come save her. Was the state teacher and Gu Chongqing this close? Let's go, Gu Jiao decisively said. Gu Chengfeng worriedly looked at Gu Chongqing's back. But my big brother, Gu Jiao calmly said, and Hun's target is the king. As long as we take the king away, and Hun will immediately chase after us. In other words, this was the only way for Gu Chongqing to escape. Gu Chengfeng turned around and looked at his brother for the last time. He wiped his red eyes sadly and grabbed Gu Jiao and the king. With a leap, he disappeared into the endless night. After confirming that their auras had disappeared, Gu Chongqing heaved a sigh of relief. The medicine I gave you can temporarily suppress the aura in your body so that others won't be able to detect the changes in you. However, you have yet to recover from your serious injuries. Even if I help you with your rehabilitation and training in secret, it will still be difficult for you to reach your ideal strength in a short period of time. The state teachers Gu Jiao, Gu Chengfeng's, Gu Chengfeng's, He, Gu, Gut Gu, Jiao, Gu, He, Ti, He, Gu, He, Gut, Ti, and Heat, Ti. He couldn't fight with an Hun, or else the medicine would be consumed faster. And Hun squinted his eyes under the mask. Ah, I remember now, you're Long Outyen. You didn't die after being hit by my sword. You're really lucky. Gu Chongqing coldly said, I'm lucky, but your life might not be. And Hun sneered, even if my sword didn't take your life, it would have destroyed your foundation. Let me think, how can you stand in front of me in perfect condition? Did the state teacher use poison on you and turn you into a death warrior? Gu Chongqing's pupils shrank. And Hun continued, but it's strange, you don't have the aura of a death warrior. Taking poison and becoming a death warrior were not necessarily related. There were two types of death warriors. One type was to learn the death warrior skills from a young age, like the dragon shadow guards and most of the death warriors in the market. The other method was to take a poison that couldn't be cured, and then learn the death warrior skills. And Hun and Sky Splitter were this type of death warrior. The advantage of the first method was that it was relatively safe, but the disadvantage was that it was limited by age. People who were over 5 years old could not learn it, and their strength was not as strong as the second method. The advantage of the second method was that it was not limited by age, but the disadvantage was that 99 out of 100 people who were poisoned died. It's hard for a normal person to survive after being poisoned, and with your injuries, it's even more impossible for you to survive the poison. But if it wasn't for the poison, how could you recover? And Hun's curiosity was completely aroused. Tell me the answer, and I'll let you go. Gu Chongqing said meaningfully, you really want to know? Why don't you answer a few of my questions first, and if I'm satisfied with your answers, I'll tell you. Young man, it's not good to delay time. And Hun was not a fool, and he admitted that he was curious about the miracle on Long Outyen, but he would not be led by the nose by him. He looked calmly at Gu Chongqing. I won't kill you today, but after I settle the matter at hand, I'll go to the State Preceptor Hall to get the answer from you. You want to leave? It's not that easy. Gu Chongqing dodged and blocked An Hun's way with his sword. But An Hun was too fast, and before he could do anything, An Hun had already sheathed his sword back into the scabbard. Then, An Hun flashed past like a hurricane, and disappeared into the night. Gu Chongqing looked at An Hun's back view, and secretly tightened his grip on the sword in his hand. In the end, he agreed to split up with Gu Jiao. After all, An Hun's target was the king, and as long as he left with the king, and Han would definitely catch up with him. It would be much safer for the brat to leave on her own. That was his plan, but he did not know that not long after he left, Gu Jiao took out her bone whistle and blew it. Gu Chengfeng froze. Oh no. He forgot that this brat had a whistle in her hand. It's over, it's over. And Han will definitely chase after her when he hears the whistle. Gu Chengfeng turned around and wanted to save Gu Jiao. Wait, I can't do that. If I bring the king and Han brings him back, he will have no qualms and will definitely kill us on the spot. Run. The further the better. And Han might not waste time on her if he realized that the king was not in her hands. Gu Chengfeng clenched his fists tightly, and with the king on his back, he gritted his teeth and ran forward. And Han heard Gu Jiao's bone whistle, and indeed changed his path to chase after Gu Jiao. His qinggong was excellent, and he walked on the steep roofs as if he was walking on flat ground. He quickly saw the small figure shuttling back and forth in the alley, and with a cold smile, he jumped and landed steadily in front of Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao suddenly stopped in her tracks. She turned around and continued to run. And Han easily jumped over her head and blocked her path again. Gu Jiao's face darkened. It was so troublesome to not know qinggong. And Han asked, "Where are the two of them hiding?" Gu Jiao said, "Find them yourself if you have the ability." And Han slowly walked towards her with a murderous aura. "Brat, killing you is just a matter of moving my fingers. If you know what's good for you, I'll give you a quick death." Gu Jiao laughed. "If you kill me, my men will also kill the king." And Han's footsteps paused slightly. Gu Jiao's acting skills reached an unprecedented level at this critical moment, and she displayed her superb acting skills. "I want the king because I want to save my own life, but if I can't save my life, then the king's life won't matter. If you don't believe me, you can try to kill me, but I can guarantee you that the king will die with me." And Han looked at her deeply, as if he was judging whether she was telling the truth or not. After a while, he laughed out loud. "Brat, you won't. I'll say it one last time, hand him over, or I'll kill you." Gu Jiao raised her eyebrows. "If I hand him over, you won't kill me?" And Han said, "I'll kill you too." Gu Jiao crossed her arms. "So, why should I hand the king over to you?" As she spoke, she seemed to inadvertently look at an abandoned horse shed on the right. Inside. And Han smashed the roof of the shed, but there was no one inside. His face turned cold. "Brat, you tricked me." "Wait." Gu Jiao raised her hand and calmly signaled him to stop. "I can hand over the king of Yen, but I have a condition. Let me see your face under the mask." In the 6 countries, no one has seen the faces of an Han and Shirtian. "I want to see it. Anyway, I'm going to die soon, so you can fulfill my small wish." Gu Jiao was stalling for time. Black Wind King was on his way here. When Black Wind King arrived, she would have a 50% chance of escaping. And Han said disdainfully, "Brat, you don't have the right to negotiate with me. My patience is really running out. If you don't tell me, I'll kill you first, and then find the king. I don't believe that your accomplice can bring the king far." Gu Jiao pointed behind him. "Ah, Shirtian." And Han didn't believe that Shirtian would appear, but this name made him care too much. He almost couldn't control himself and instinctively looked back. When he realized that he had been tricked again, Gu Jiao had already thrown out a bag of black fire pearls. He was blown back more than 10 steps. Gu Jiao took the opportunity to turn out of the alley. "Boss." Gu Jiao saw Black Wind King running towards her. Her eyes lit up, and she even forgot about the pain in her leg. And Han was completely enraged. He chased after her and slammed his palm on the wall beside him. The wall that had not been repaired for a long time suddenly collapsed, and fell towards Gu Jiao's face. "This time, no one will be able to save you." And Han had just finished his words when a black figure flew out from the night. A slender and strong arm grabbed Gu Jiao and flew out of the ruins. His speed was too fast, and Gu Jiao was blown in the face. After he steadily landed on the ground, Gu Jiao looked at the long shadow on the ground which was illuminated by the moonlight and expressionlessly spat out a mouthful of dust. "Long time no see." Long E. Digression. It seems that many people said that they would give tickets to Long E as soon as he appeared. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more wonderful content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/896428826/1061555101. HTML Genius will remember this site's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 805. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. Long E placed Gu Jiao in a proper position as if he was placing his own little doll. He didn't forget to use his internal force to smooth out the little ahog on the little doll's head. Long E, why are you here? Gu Jiao asked him. Obviously, Long E wouldn't answer. Forget it, this problem can be slowly studied later. The most important thing now is to deal with An Hun, this troublesome guy. Gu Jiao pointed at An Hun, who was not far away, and seriously said, Long E, beat him. I can't beat you, I'll let Long E beat you. An Hun obviously didn't expect Gu Jiao to suddenly change her style. But thinking about it, this kid was originally shameless, otherwise, he wouldn't have repeatedly played with him. But who was this big guy that suddenly appeared? Long E was wearing a black robe and a ghost mask. Other than Gu Jiao, Princess Xinyang and Xiao Hang, no one else had seen his adult appearance. But the aura emitted from his body was faintly familiar to An Hun. An Hun slightly narrowed his eyes. Why? Could it be because the other party was also a death warrior? Long E didn't move. He tilted his head and looked at Gu Jiao in confusion. Then he reached out his hand and pinched Gu Jiao's cheek. Gu Jiao opened her mouth and said incoherently, What are you doing? Long E looked at her throat with a confused face. Gu Jiao understood. After coming to Yen country, she used the voice of a teenager most of the time to avoid being exposed. Long E had never heard this voice. He thought that there was something wrong with her voice. Long E looked left and right and saw that Gu Jiao's cheeks were numb. She wanted to close her little mouth, but she was unable to. She said, I'm not fine, you should save, beat, salt, people, first. Give the opponent a little bit of basic respect, okay? That's not a small shrimp. He's the #1 death warrior of the 6 countries, An Hun. He has such a strong murderous aura, why do you not seem to put him in your eyes? An Hun looked at Long E and asked indifferently, Who are you? Gu Jiao took Long Yi's hand away. Long E turned around and looked at An Hun coldly. Gu Jiao stuck out her little head from behind Long E and said with incomparable arrogance, Your uncle. An Hun didn't argue with the child. His gaze landed on Long Yi's face again. Your aura feels familiar. I feel like I've seen you somewhere before. But since you don't want to tell me, I'll find the answer myself. Finished speaking, he suddenly used his internal force, then raising his palm, he rushed towards Long E. The dragon shadow guards of Zhao country were all equipped with long swords, and Long E was naturally no exception. With a shake of his hand, he lifted the long sword from his waist into the air. Then, he flew up and waved his hand. The long sword and scabbard were inserted into the bluestone ground where he had been standing, like a shield protecting Gu Jiao. With this as the boundary, those who break into this boundary will die. An Hun looked at the long sword and scabbard that were inserted into the bluestone ground. It wasn't strange for the long sword to be inserted into the ground, after all, it was an offensive weapon. But the scabbard was blunt, and it was actually inserted deeply into the ground. From this, it could be seen how strong the opponent was. He slightly narrowed his eyes. Then let's see how powerful you are. Black Wind King rushed over from behind Gu Jiao. It stopped beside Gu Jiao and sniffed Gu Jiao's aura. I'm not injured. Gu Jiao touched its head. She only sprained her right leg slightly, nothing serious. One person and one horse quietly watched the duel in the alley. A true expert never needed too complicated and flashy moves, especially a death warrior whose mission was to kill people. Every move was simple and crude, directly hitting the vital points. Long Yi used his fist, while An Hun used his palm. Long Yi's fist was aimed at An Hun's chest. With Long Yi's strength, he could instantly punch through An Hun's chest and make his heart explode. Of course, An Hun wouldn't let Long Yi have his way so easily. He used his palm to block Long Yi's fist. But Long Yi's strength was beyond his imagination. He thought that he could shake Long Yi off with his palm, but who would have thought that Long Yi would use his unstoppable strength to force An Hun to slide back dozens of steps. The soles of his shoes were almost smoking from the friction. An Hun was forced to the entrance of the alley. He stepped on the wall behind him and used the force to jump over Long Yi's head. He arrived behind Long Yi and planned to sneak attack Long Yi's heart with his palm. Long Yi turned around and punched. An Hun was sent flying by Long Yi's strength. Gu Jiao, wah! When An Hun was about to hit the roof, he stretched out his hand and grabbed the corner of the roof. His body twisted a few times to dissipate the huge force. Then, with a forceful pull of his arm, he did a side flip and landed steadily on the roof. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Long Yi, who was in the alley. A trace of disbelief flashed through his eyes. Although he had only used less than 50% of his strength, one should know that in these years, he had only used 30% of his strength at most. It was the first time in 20 years that someone could send him flying with a punch when he had used almost half of his strength. Who are you? He asked coldly. After Long Outyen, An Hun was very curious about this dark-clothed death warrior. As an expert, other than constantly improving his strength, he also had to study different opponents. Long Yi didn't answer him. Within the 6 countries, only the Dragon Shadow Guards of Zhao Country were trained to be silent death warriors under the special request of the late emperor. The rest of the death warriors were not like this. Therefore, in An Hun's eyes, Long Yi's silence meant that Long Yi was too lazy to talk to him. An Hun felt that he had been offended. Gu Jiao sat on the back of the horse and calmly looked at An Hun, who was on the roof. She smiled faintly and said, "Hey, the one called An Hun, why aren't you fighting? Are you afraid? If you obediently kowtow to me and admit defeat, I might consider giving you a quick death." An Hun snorted and looked at Gu Jiao. "Kid, your tone is too arrogant. I only used less than 50% of my strength just now. Do you really think that a death warrior that you casually invited from outside can be this lord's opponent?" Gu Jiao raised her eyebrows. "This lord? You don't have much strength, but you talk big. Hee hee." This was what An Hun had mocked Gu Jiao before. "You are young but you talk big." Now, Gu Jiao was arrogant and domineering. An Hun coldly said, "Kid, don't be complacent too early. After I kill him, the next one to kill is you." Gu Jiao turned her head and looked at Long Yi. "Long Yi, he is fierce to me." An Hun. Long Yi's eyes were cold. He fiercely stomped on the ground and rushed towards An Hun, who was on the roof. This time, An Hun did not deliberately hide his strength like before. He used 70% of his strength all of a sudden. The two of them fought from the roof to the alley, and from the alley to the roof. Fortunately, this was an old street that was going to be demolished and no one lived there. Otherwise, such a big movement would have startled everyone. The more An Hun fought, the stranger he felt. Why is this person's fighting style so familiar? Have I fought with him before? But such a powerful opponent, I should have some impression of him. Gu Jiao seriously observed the fight between experts. It seems that they are evenly matched, but Long Yi's stamina is obviously more powerful. Long Yi did not even take a breath, but An Hun's breathing and rhythm are somewhat disrupted. He is really worthy of being called Long Yi Ah. An Hun received another punch from Long Yi, but Long Yi also received half of An Hun's palm. Why was it only half of An Hun's palm? Because Long Yi quickly retreated, half of the strength did not fall on Long Yi's body. But this exchange of blows was not without any gains. The cuff of Long Yi's sleeve was torn, and a small black thing fell out. And Han turned his hand to catch it, and when he looked carefully, he was stunned. This is... Long Yi kicked the back of Han's hand, and the jade ring was shaken into the air. Long Yi snatched the jade ring back and put it back into his bosom. And Han did not care about his broken hand, and asked with a frown, "Where did this jade ring come from? Where did its owner go?" Long Yi's reply was a heavy punch. And Han looked deeply at Long Yi, and then he made an incomparably bold decision. He took the risk of getting injured, and took Long Yi's punch head-on. And at the moment when his shoulder blade was almost broken, he took off Long Yi's mask. When that face, which was very similar to the one in his memory, but much more mature, entered his eyes, his entire breathing stopped. He forgot to resist, and fell down rapidly. He opened his eyes wide in disbelief. "How can it be you, Sky Splitter?" Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Shetian had disappeared for 20 years, and according to his understanding of Shetian was most likely dead. Otherwise, Yen country would not have had no news of Shetian for so long. But if he wasn't the Sky Splitter, how could he have the same face as the Sky Splitter? It was just that he did not have the immaturity of a teenager. No wonder he had a sense of déjà vu from the beginning. It was Shetian. Shetian was back. But why was Shetian with a person from Zhao country? And Shetian's eyes, why were there no manic and murderous aura? Suddenly, a voice flashed in his mind. If you see a teenager with a pair of blood-red eyes, that is Shetian. Shetian has no humanity, no weakness, he only has one instinct, to kill. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that cannot be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8264106134672. HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 806. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet are all here. This was obviously not the Shetian in his memory. What happened to Shetian? Why did he seem to be a different person? Also, the way Shetian looked at him was also very strange, as if he didn't recognize him at all. It didn't make sense that only he felt familiar with Shetian, but Shetian didn't recognize him at all. Long Yi took back the mask and put it on, then punched again. And Han couldn't take his fist again. It didn't matter if he took a few punches when he was Shetian, but if he knew, he wouldn't dare to take it again. He dodged and looked at Long Yi with a frown. "Are you crazy?" "It's me." Gu Jiao made a strange sound. From the beginning of the fight between Long Yi and Han, she was basically sure that Long Yi was Han's only opponent, Shetian. But Han's question was very strange. It sounded like Han knew Long Yi, and Long Yi should also know Han? Did Long Yi forget the matters of the past? So he didn't recognize Han. Gu Jiao sized up Han, who specialized in defense, and muttered, "Han, this guy's morale is very low. It seems that he suffered a lot of beatings from Shetian in the past." After Han found out that the opponent was Shetian, he indeed panicked for a moment. This was a fear hidden in his bones. If he hadn't been beaten 100 times, he wouldn't be able to have this reaction. But there was also a saying in the world, now is not the same as before. Shetian wasn't the Shetian of 20 years ago, and Han was also no longer the Han of 20 years ago. In these 20 years, and Hun didn't relax for a moment. On the other hand, Shirtian seemed to have forgotten his previous techniques. His killing intent was greatly reduced, and his strength was also a lot weaker. As this thought flashed, and Hun gradually calmed down. Just now, he didn't kill him out of curiosity, and then he was afraid of himself, so he restrained his hands and feet. Now that he thought it through, Shirtian wasn't so scary anymore. No matter what happened to Shirtian, the current Shirtian was no longer his opponent. And Hun landed on the roof of a house and coldly looked at Long Yi, who was in the alley. "This is not the duel I wanted. Defeating the current you won't make me happy, but since you insist on protecting that brat and becoming my enemy, then don't blame me for taking advantage of your precarious situation." Die, Heaven Splitter. Sky Splitter? Long Yi's brain suddenly buzzed. Confusion appeared in his eyes for a moment. "Long Yi, be careful," Gu Jiao reminded him. Unfortunately, it was too late. And Hun's palm landed solidly on Long Yi's chest. Long Yi was sent flying, and as if thrown sandbag, he heavily fell on the ground, then slid all the way to the corner of the wall, and collided with the ice-cold and hard wall, making a hole in the wall. And Hun flew up and arrived in front of Long Yi. He stretched out his hand and pulled Long Yi out from the hole and kicked him to the ground. "Shirtian, without the slaughter chi, you are really weak." After he finished speaking, he kicked Long Yi again. Long Yi looked at the sky in a daze and didn't dodge. Gu Jiao. Oh no, Long Yi heard Shirtian's name, and crashed. Gu Jiao took out a small mechanical box made by Gu Xiaoshun from her bosom and threw it towards An Hun. Gu Xiaoshun's talent was not bad. Although this mechanical box was not as powerful as the one made by Master Lu, it still grazed An Hun's neck. A string of blood splattered out, and a dense smell of blood filled An Hun's entire nose. He put down his foot that was about to step on Long Yi, and coldly turned around and looked at Gu Jiao. "Brat, since you are in a hurry to die, I will help you." Gu Jiao looked at An Hun, who suddenly became serious, and blankly blinked her eyes. No need." An Hun pushed his qing gong to the extreme, and his black robe fluttered in the night wind. He tiptoed, and just as he was about to pass by Long Yi's sword and scabbard, a terrifying aura suddenly approached him from behind. His eyebrows jumped, and subconsciously turned his head. He saw that Long Yi, who should have been beaten by him without any strength to fight back, actually stood up unscathed. Long Yi's speed was so fast that only an afterimage could be seen. In a blink of an eye, Long Yi had already passed An Hun, and arrived in front of Gu Jiao. "Those who cross this boundary, die." Long Yi grabbed An Hun's neck, lifted him up high, and mercilessly threw him to the ground. An Hun didn't know how many bones were broken, and his internal organs were also injured. He spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. This was impossible. Impossible. He obviously didn't have Shirtian's killing intent, so why was he still not his opponent? He forgot his killing instinct, but he had the power to protect. The reunion 20 years later ended with An Hun's crushing defeat, but it was not that easy for Long Yi to kill An Hun. The one who could kill An Hun was Shirtian, who only had killing instinct. Because only in front of Shirtian, he had a fatal weakness. "Shirtian, I lost today, but I won't always lose to you, see you later." An Hun covered his painful chest, and threw a black fire pearl at Long Yi. Using the dense fog after the explosion, he used qing gong to escape. Gu Jiao touched her chin. "So this guy also has a black fire pearl on him, no wonder he knew to avoid it. But his black fire pearl is not the same as mine, his is more like a smoke bomb, later I will also make a few of them." Long Yi. Gu Jiao turned over and dismounted, and the moment she landed on the ground, she found that her sprained right leg was already numb. She used her left leg to jump over, and said to Long Yi, "Let me see if you are injured." Long Yi's body had some scratches and bruises, but no internal injuries. Gu Jiao said, "I didn't bring a first aid kit, I will clean your wounds when we get back." Long Yi's gaze fell on her leg. She curved her lips and said, "It's numb." Long Yi nodded his head, bent down, and picked her up. Gu Jiao decided to go back the way she came, and look for Gu Chongqing and Yi Qing. She hoped that they were okay. Gu Jiao's head and feet were facing down, and she said with an expressionless face, "I want to ride a horse, being picked up by you makes me dizzy." Long Yi heard, "Ha ha ha, ride a horse, dizzy." Then Gu Jiao was picked up by him the whole way. When Gu Jiao found Gu Chongqing had already fainted on the ground. Gu Jiao took his pulse and checked his body. When she found that there were no new injuries on his body, she was secretly relieved. Gu Jiao didn't know that Han was curious about Gu Chongqing's recovery, and thought that Han was too lazy to waste time on Gu Chongqing, so he directly left. Long Yi grabbed Gu Chongqing and placed him on the back of Black Wind King. Very quickly, they met Yi Qing again. Yi Qing's group of 5 were actually injured, and their injuries weren't light. This was very confusing. Why did Han beat up Yi Qing, but not Gu Chongqing? Was it because of looks? Gu Jiao returned to the teacher hall, called a carriage, and brought Yi Qing's group back. Gu Chengfeng was already waiting at the Qilin Hall. Seeing Gu Jiao return safely, the stone in his heart fell to the ground. He was just about to ask Gu Jiao how she got away, when in a blink of an eye, he saw Long Yi behind Gu Jiao. He was shocked. What's going on? Why is Long Yi here? Gu Jiao spread out her hands. I also want to know. Unfortunately, Long Yi couldn't speak, couldn't write, and couldn't even communicate with others. Wait a minute, if Han could speak, then Long Yi should have been able to too. Was it because he lost his memory, plus the fact that Zhao Guo's shadow guards couldn't speak, so he became like this? Long Yi began to look room by room. Gu Jiao knew he was looking for Xiao Heng. Gu Jiao still didn't know how Long Yi came to Yan Empire. If he came alone, then how did he find the right way? He didn't even remember who he was, so he shouldn't remember the way back to Yan Empire. If he didn't come alone, then who sent him here? So far, he didn't show any intention of meeting up with anyone. Intuition told Gu Jiao that Long Yi wasn't sent by Princess Xinyang to protect her and Xiao Heng, but no matter what Long Yi's purpose was in Yan Empire, he didn't forget his little master. Looking at him patiently looking for Xiao Heng in every room, Gu Jiao walked over, pulled his sleeve, and said to him, "Heng is not here, I'll let Gu Chengfeng take you to find him." Gu Chengfeng quivered and pointed at himself. Why me? Being alone with Long Yi, this kind of big shot was very scary, okay? Gu Chengfeng cleared his throat and asked, "Aren't you going back to Duke Mansion?" Gu Jiao said, "I still have something to do." Gu Jiao finished treating Long Yi's injuries, then let Gu Chengfeng take him and the unconscious monarch to the carriage to Duke Mansion. She went to the intensive care unit to see Gu Chongqing. From Gu Chongqing's physical strength just now, it didn't seem like he had just woken up tonight. He must have woken up a long time ago, and secretly did something behind her back. Since he's living here, then there must be some clues here. Gu Jiao began to rummage through the bedside table, medicine cabinet, and even under the bed. Needless to say, she really found something that didn't belong to this ward. Gu Jiao took out a small box hidden in the bedside table, opened it, and found some strange bottles and a few yellowing books inside. Gu Jiao looked and frowned. Introduction to Death Soldiers, Secrets to Success for Death Soldiers, 10 days to teach you to become a qualified Death Soldier, Self-Cultivation for Death Soldiers. What kind of nonsense is this? Just at this moment, Lord Imperial Tutor walked in. Gu Jiao casually picked up a book and waved it, indifferently looking at him. Lord Imperial Tutor was caught red-handed, lightly coughed, and said, "I can explain. The latest chapter of this book is not finished. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/1061333264. HTML Genius will remember this site's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile reading website, m. zhbqg.com Chapter 807. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found on the internet here. Gu Jiao's eyes became extremely dangerous. It better be a reasonable explanation. Otherwise, I don't care if you are my godfather or not. I will treat you as my godfather and beat you up. I will never admit that I want to beat him up. Gu Chongqing was in an absolute coma at this moment. The state preceptor came to the bedside and looked at him with a complicated expression. He sighed and said, "This is his own decision. Make it clear." Gu Jiao said lightly. The state preceptor said, "He was hit by an Hun's sword when he was defenseless. His foundation was destroyed, his dantian was damaged, and countless veins were broken. You are a doctor. You should understand that he is basically a cripple at this point." Gu Jiao didn't refute this point. As early as when she operated on Gu Chongqing, she already knew how bad his situation was. Otherwise, when the state preceptor asked her what if Gu Chongqing became a cripple, her answer was, "I will take care of him," instead of, "I will cure him." From a medical point of view, Gu Chongqing had no possibility of being cured. Gu Jiao asked, "So you turned him into a man of sacrifice?" The state preceptor sighed helplessly. "I said that this is his own choice. I just provided him with a plan. It is up to him whether he accepts it or not." Gu Jiao remembered the conversation that happened in this intensive care unit. She asked, "He was already awake at that time, right? You deliberately asked me in front of him, 'What if he becomes a cripple, what will I do?' You wanted him to hear my answer, to move him, and to make him more determined not to be a burden to me." The state preceptor opened his mouth but didn't refute. Gu Jiao's cold eyes fell on the state preceptor's face, which was full of vicissitudes of life. "You still have the nerve to say that this is his own choice?" The state preceptor blocked his mouth with his fist. "Ahem. All right, I admit that I did use some underhanded means, but," Gu Jiao said, "you'd better not say it's for my own good, or I'll kill you right now." The state preceptor looked at her with a face full of shock and confusion, as if to say, "Is she really that daring? He even dared to kill the state preceptor? Forget it, I've spoiled her." A certain imperial preceptor muttered. "What are you mumbling about?" Gu Jiao didn't hear him clearly. The state preceptor said earnestly, "I'm saying that this is the only way for him to return to normal. Although it might not succeed, it's better than turning him into a cripple. With his pride, becoming a cripple is more terrible than letting him die." Gu Jiao thought of the dream she had in Zhao country. During the battle at the border, the remnants of the previous dynasty had colluded with the Chan country's army and turned Gu Chongqing into a cripple, making him wish he was dead for the rest of his life. The state preceptor continued, "So I told him that if he doesn't want to become a cripple, there's only one way. With the help of medicine, he can become a death warrior. Death warriors are originally established after death. There's a similar precedent in the state preceptor hall, but the premise is to take a poison that has no antidote." Gu Jiao paused. "Is it the poison that fifth grandfather Han was poisoned with?" The state preceptor nodded. "That's right. That kind of poison has a 90% chance of death. If he survives it, he will have the qualification to become a death warrior. Shetian and an Han also became death warriors because they were poisoned with this kind of poison. The probability of surviving after being poisoned with this kind of poison was not high, and those who survived all became death warriors except for fifth grandfather Han. Whether being poisoned and becoming a death warrior was inevitable, no one knew the answer until now. However, although fifth grandfather Han didn't become a death warrior, he had progeria. It seemed that the after-effects of this kind of poison were indeed quite severe. The state preceptor said, "That kind of poison is very strange. Most people can't survive it, and once they do, they will become abnormally strong. I call it screening." Gu Jiao frowned slightly. "Screening?" The state preceptor took a deep look at Gu Jiao and said, "It's a kind of survival of the fittest in genes." Gu Jiao was thinking with her eyes down. She didn't notice the state preceptor's eyes looking at her. When she raised her eyes to look at the state preceptor, there was no emotion in the state preceptor's eyes. "Where does this poison come from?" she asked. The state preceptor said, "It's the juice from the roots of a kind of purple grass, but it's very difficult to find that kind of purple grass now. It's a pity. If there is, maybe I can bring it back to study." Gu Jiao said again, "Then where did the poison you gave to Gu Chongqing come from?" The state preceptor said helplessly, "There's only one bottle left, and I gave it all to him." Gu Jiao asked another question in the bottom of her heart, "But why didn't I feel the aura of a death warrior on him?" The state preceptor said, "Because he didn't become a death warrior." Gu Jiao asked puzzledly, "What do you mean?" The state preceptor smiled politely. "After I gave him the medicine, I found that it had expired." Gu Jiao, "So now the state preceptor continued to smile awkwardly and politely, "he thought he was a death warrior." Gu Jiao again, "To be honest, the state preceptor didn't expect this situation. He found that the medicine had expired the next day and hurried to see Gu Chongqing's situation." Unexpectedly, Gu Chongqing stood by the bed with a walking stick and said excitedly to him, "State preceptor, the medicine you gave is really effective. I can stand up." The state preceptor's expression at that time was unprecedented. Gu Chongqing wondered, "But why? I don't feel the pain you mentioned." The state preceptor mentioned to Gu Chongqing that the process of decocting this kind of poison was no different from dying once. Then, the state preceptor decisively stopped him from taking the painkillers. After 3 days of living hell, Gu Chongqing became more and more convinced that he had survived the poison. This wasn't a miracle that could be created by medicine. It was a strong willpower to protect his sister at all costs. The state preceptor sighed innocently. "I saw that he was in good condition, so I didn't have the heart to expose him. He was afraid that if he exposed him, his beliefs would collapse and never recover." Gu Jiao looked at the various death warriors in her hand and asked in confusion, "Then, what's with these books?" The state preceptor said truthfully, "I wrote them randomly. But it also took him a lot of effort. Just looking for the empty yellowed books and thinking of the names almost made him forget." Gu Jiao then picked up a book titled 10 Days to Become a Qualified Death Warrior, and the corner of her mouth twitched. "I was wondering why these books looked so indecent." The state preceptor, with Gu Chongqing's current condition, it was more appropriate for him to continue staying in the state preceptor's hall. As for when to tell him the truth, it would depend on his recovery. Before he completely recovered, he couldn't let his beliefs collapse halfway. When they came out of the state preceptor's hall, it was already after midnight. Gu Jiao and the Black Wind King returned to the Duke and estate. The Duke and estate was very quiet. Xiao Heng didn't tell his family that Gu Jiao went to the palace to steal the monarch. He only said that she had something to do in the state preceptor's hall and might return tomorrow. Everyone went to rest. Xiao Heng waited for Gu Jiao alone in the room. He didn't know how Gu Jiao's situation was, but according to the plan, the monarch was to be brought back to the Duke and estate. Creak, the courtyard door of Foam Courtyard was pushed open. Xiao Heng hurried out of the room. "Jiao." The person who came in wasn't Gu Jiao, but Steward Zheng. Steward Zheng held a lantern and looked at Xiao Heng hurriedly coming out of the corridor. He said in surprise, "Your Highness Zhong's son, it's so late and you haven't gone to bed yet?" Xiao Heng held back his disappointment and asked calmly, "It's so late, why are you here?" Steward Zheng pointed at the courtyard door behind him and explained, I saw that the door wasn't closed, so I thought it might be a lazy servant, so I came in to take a look." Xiao Heng said, "I told him to leave the door open." Steward Zhang was confused for a moment and asked, "Aren't Lord Xiao and young Master Gu coming back tomorrow?" They were the only ones in the courtyard who went out. Xiao Heng said calmly, "They might come back earlier. It's getting late, Steward Zheng, you should go and rest." "There's nothing here." Steward Zheng smiled, Yes, I'll take my leave." Steward Zhang had only taken a few steps when he turned back and asked Xiao Heng, "Your Highness Zhong's son, are you not used to living here?" Duke said that you can go directly to his courtyard. His courtyard is spacious, and there are too many people in Foam Courtyard. Xiao Hang said seriously, "No, I'm living very well in Feng Courtyard." Steward Zheng smiled embarrassedly. He thought, "You are the dignified eldest grandson of the emperor. Why don't you live with your own uncle, but live with a few people from the Zhao kingdom? Okay, if there's anything, please don't hesitate to tell me." This time, Steward Zheng really left and didn't come back. Time passed little by little. Xiao Hang was still sitting at first, but he quickly stood up. He looked at the window for a while, and then walked around the room for a while. Finally, when he was about to enter the palace to inquire about the news, there was movement outside the courtyard again. Xiao Hang didn't wait for someone to open the door. He walked out in large strides and opened the courtyard door. Soon after, he saw Long Yi standing at the door. The latest chapter of this book is not finished. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_826428061125592. HTML Genius remembers this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile reading website, zhbqg.com. Chapter 808. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more wonderful content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all here. Xiao Hang was suddenly startled. Seeing his little master was startled, Long Yi was also startled. Even the width of his mouth was synchronized with his little master's. Xiao Hang blinked his eyes in confusion and raised his hand. He closed the door. He opened the door again. Long Yi was still here. It wasn't a dream. Long Yi really came. Long Pang. Before Xiao Hang could finish speaking, Long Yi pulled the door over and closed it. Soon after, Long Yi opened the door again. Xiao Hang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was already 20 years old. He was no longer that little troublemaker who clamored for Long Yi to play with him every day. But everyone had changed. Only Long Yi hadn't changed. Xiao Heng's nose suddenly became somewhat sour. To him, Long Yi wasn't an imperial bodyguard or a servant. Long Yi was a family member like Princess Xinyang. Long Yi had accompanied him through his ignorant childhood and naughty childhood. He would never be angry with him. He would never be disappointed in him. Long Yi. His voice was almost choked. However, before he could shed tears, Long Yi picked him up and held him up. Xiao Heng only felt that the sky was spinning and the earth was spinning. His tears were forced back. Soon after, Long Yi didn't say anything, mainly because he didn't know how to speak. He picked Xiao Heng up and brought him to an empty room. "This is Gu Chengfeng's room," Xiao Heng said with his head and feet facing down. Long Yi went next door again. "This is the room for the monarch," Xiao Heng said again. Long Yi continued to walk forward and arrived at the third empty room. This was Gu Jiao's room. Xiao Heng decisively shut his mouth. "Come on, throw me on the Jiao Jiao bed." Long Yi turned around and went out. Xiao Heng. Long Yi found Xiao Heng's room. After all, this was the only empty room. He quickly removed Xiao Heng's outer garment, leaving only his inner garment, and mercilessly threw it into the mosquito net. Xiao Heng stood up slightly. Long Yi covered his face with his palm and pushed him back to the pillow. It was time for the little master to sleep. When Gu Jiao returned to Feng Courtyard, the oil lamp inside Xiao Heng's room had already been extinguished, and Xiao Heng was sitting on the beam of the room while hugging his long sword, and had fallen asleep with his back leaning against the beam. This was a habit that Long Yi had developed after guarding Princess Xinyang and Xiao Heng for many years. As long as they were in an unfamiliar environment, he would guard them while they rested. He must be exhausted from the journey. Even his breathing was heavier than before. Xiao Heng quietly sat up and stretched out a finger to lift the mosquito net. Long Yi's body moved. "I'm going to the outhouse," Xiao Heng said. Long Yi had been on his way and hadn't had a good night's sleep. Moreover, he had also fought with An Hun. In fact, he was already exhausted. If there was no dangerous aura approaching, he wouldn't wake up. Xiao Heng quietly walked out. Just when he reached the door, he saw Gu Jiao in the corridor opposite. He quickly walked over. Gu Jiao unexpectedly looked at him. "I thought you were asleep." Xiao Heng lowered his voice. "No, I was waiting for you. Let's go in and talk. Don't wake Long Yi up." Gu Jiao asked, "Is Long Yi asleep?" Xiao Heng nodded his head. He is very tired. I have never seen him so tired." Gu Jiao turned her head and looked at the closed door. Then pushing the door, she entered the room with Xiao Heng. "Have Gu Chengfeng and the Emperor arrived?" Gu Jiao took out a match and lit an oil lamp. "Yes, they're already asleep," Xiao Heng said. He walked to the table and poured a cup of herbal tea for Gu Jiao. "Drink some water first." Gu Jiao was indeed very thirsty. She took the cup and gulped down 3 large cups of tea. Xiao Heng looked at her with heartache. "Are you injured?" They arrived in time. "I'm not injured." Her feet were no longer in the way. "What's going on with Gu Chongqing?" Xiao Heng asked. Gu Jiao told Xiao Heng about the incident of the suicide soldiers caused by the state preceptor. Xiao Heng didn't know what to say after hearing it. "Something like that can happen. I'm really looking forward to the day when Gu Chongqing finds out the truth. Will he kill the silly me or the great hoodwinker state preceptor?" Gu Jiao said thoughtfully, "I have a question. Our actions were very secretive, so how did the state preceptor know that we were going to the palace to assassinate the emperor? Does this mean that he knows that the emperor in the imperial court is a fake?" Xiao Heng said in all seriousness, "I think it might be because of his boundless magic power and divination." Gu Jiao narrowed her eyes slightly. "So it's you?" Xiao Heng retorted, "It's not me." Gu Jiao laughed. Xiao Heng peeled an orange for Gu Jiao. "Eat the orange, eat the orange." Gu Jiao took the orange and gave him a look that said, "I've seen through you." Xiao Heng smiled. "By the way, how did you run into Long Yi?" "We just ran into each other." Gu Jiao briefly recounted how Long Yi arrived in time and beat up An Hun. She also mentioned 2 key points. First, Long Yi was Shetian. It was confirmed. Second, Long Yi and An Hun were old acquaintances. Unfortunately, Long Yi had lost his memory and couldn't remember anything. Third, Long Yi might be able to talk. As for the third point, Xiao Heng didn't have any doubts. After all, other than the late emperor of Zhao country, no one would train their men of sacrifice into a tool that couldn't be communicated. As for the second point, I can answer you. Xiao Heng said. Shetian and An Hun are fellow apprentices of the same sect. Shetian is a talented junior apprentice brother. Gu Jiao suddenly realized. They actually have this kind of relationship. No wonder An Hun would talk to Long Yi like that. But, who did you hear this from? Xiao Heng thought for a bit and finally contributed his strong desire to live. State preceptor. Gu Jiao suddenly became confused. When did the relationship between the two of you become so good? He also told you this kind of information that couldn't be found in the book collection pavilion? Xiao Heng coughed softly. It's Xiao Qing. State preceptor and Xiao Qing have a good relationship. He relied on Xiao Qing's good fortune. Speaking of which, Xiao Qing went out to travel for so long. Isn't your mother worried? Xiao Heng smiled. When he was 6 years old, he took the imperial bodyguards to travel Jianghu. He won't suffer losses outside. Gu Jiao asked, What were you doing when you were 6 years old? Xiao Heng spread out his hands. Every day, I was at my mother's side. I wasn't allowed to leave her side. Every day, other than reciting poems, I was practicing calligraphy. Gu Jiao touched her chin. The way two people raise their children is really poles apart. Then, do you envy Shao Qing? Do you want to be like Shao Qing, not being forced to study or practice calligraphy? Instead, you can live every day freely and happily? No. Xiao Heng said. Why? Gu Jiao asked. Xiao Heng held her soft hand and deeply stared into her eyes. Because if I grew up in Yen country, I wouldn't have met you. Cold Palace. And Han returned to the east courtyard with blood all over his body. Han She came out of the room and was shocked by his appearance. How did you become like this? Where's His Majesty? And Han said faintly, he was taken away by someone. Han She frowned. Didn't I ask you to get him back? And Han's face turned ugly. Do you think I let them go on purpose? Han She choked. And Han was her aide, not her servant. She should treat him with respect. She softened her tone and said, You're seriously injured. I'll ask someone to find an imperial doctor. Her attitude softened. And Han's attitude was naturally not so aggressive. And Han waved his hand. No need. I'll heal myself. Han She asked again, What happened? Who hurt you like this? And Han was not in a hurry to answer Han She's question. Instead he asked, Who is that Xiao Lulang? Han She realized something and asked, Was he the one who did it tonight? You answer me first. And Han said. Han She frowned. He is from Zhao Kingdom. He entered Qianqiong Academy with Xiao Liulong's identity. Now he is the adopted son of An Guogong. We haven't found out his specific identity yet. And Han thought of what happened tonight and his chest began to ache. You'd better check it quickly. If you can't find it in Yen Kingdom, send someone to Zhao Kingdom. This kid is strange. Han She agreed. He is indeed strange. He is so young, but he can kill Nangong Li and defeat Han Ci to take away the Black Wind Camp. He may be Shangguan Yan's chess piece. And Han coldly snorted. Shangguan Yan doesn't have this ability. What? Does this Xiao Lulang have a big background? Even the royal princess of Shang Kingdom can't control him? And Han coldly said. It's not his background, it's my junior brother. Han She thoughtfully said. I heard you mention your junior brother. You said he was very powerful and was your only opponent in the world. But isn't he dead? And Han's eyes were malicious. I also thought he was dead, but I saw him again tonight. He was with Xiao Lulang. So he was the one who seriously injured you. Han She couldn't believe it. She even had a trace of disappointment in her heart. She always thought that An Han was the #1 master of the 6 countries. And Han glanced at Han She and coldly snorted. I underestimated him this time. Next time, I will kill him with my own hands. Junior brother, oh junior brother, do you know that you went to Zhao Kingdom with a mission? Not only did you not complete the mission, you even forgot who you are. Since that's the case, don't blame me for cleaning up the sect for my master. Digression, it's the end of the month. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet are available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642/8264286/1061111020. HTML Genius remembers this site's address in a second. www.zhbqg.com Biku mobile reading website, m. zhbqg.com. Chapter 809. The latest chapter of the book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found on the internet. After a long and torturous night, the last person in Feng's courtyard who was awake fell into a deep sleep. The crescent moon climbed out of the clouds and echoed with the stars. The hot summer was coming to an end, and even the noisy cicadas were much weaker. This time, everyone slept soundly. The next day, the sun rose from the east, and Shang Do woke up in the morning light. The people in Feng's courtyard started a busy day. Little Jing Kong was the first to wake up. He had been forced to be an attendant by his bad brother-in-law, so he couldn't move in with Gu Jiao openly. Therefore, he would show his anger every morning to express his strong dissatisfaction. But this morning, when he opened his eyes, he found himself lying on an unfamiliar bed. Huh? He got up, jumped out of bed, and opened the door to take a look. Wow, wow, wow. It was the courtyard of the Duke's public house. He slept in the Duke's public house last night. He was with Jiao Jiao. Jiao! Oh! The little guy rushed to Gu Jiao, but before he could break into Gu Jiao's room, he was carried away by a tall figure. On the other side, the king was also slowly waking up. There was still a little bit of the softening powder in his body, so his whole body was still sore and weak. He didn't know if it was his illusion, but he felt a little pain all over his body. The king frowned and sat up with difficulty. He held his forehead with one hand and felt dizzy for a while. Suddenly, he felt something was wrong. He touched his head again, but it was gone. His wig was gone. Ever since the king was shaved bald by Han Yi, he couldn't afford to lose face. He would wear a wig whenever he went out and only take it off when he was sleeping. When he went to the cold palace to see Han Yi, he was suddenly knocked out by Han Yi. When he woke up in the cellar, his hair was still there. In the cellar. Yes, he was locked in the cellar by Han Yi. How could there be such strong light in the cellar? This was not a cellar. What was Han Shi up to now? Creak, the door was pushed open, and Zhang Dequan came in with a pot of cold tea. The monarch raised his sore arm to pull open the curtain and saw Zhang Dequan putting tea on the table. He frowned. Why are you here? Even you have betrayed us. Otherwise, why would she appear in Han Shi's territory? Zhang Dequan was shocked by the king's sudden shout. If not for his many years of experience as a eunuch, the teapot in his hand would have flown out of his hands. He calmed himself down and came to the bedside. He bowed to the king and said happily, "Your Majesty, you're awake? Where's that vicious woman from the Han family?" The monarch asked coldly. Zhang Dequan was stunned. He thought that the monarch was asking about Han Shi's whereabouts and fate. He quickly replied, "Han Shi is in the cold palace. Isn't it just cold here?" The monarch was halfway through his sentence when he suddenly realized what Zhang Dequan meant. He frowned. "Where is this?" Zhang Dequan replied, "Your Majesty, this is the house of Duke." Seeing the monarch's confused expression, Zhang Dequan reported to the monarch how he had escaped from the palace and came to the house of Duke to ask Sir Xiao for help. This time, it's all thanks to His Highness Zhang's son and Sir Xiao. They thought of a way to save your Majesty from the cold palace. The monarch was shocked. He did not expect that the people who had saved him from the tiger's den would be the weakest imperial grandson and Xiao Lulang, whom he disliked the most. It seemed that the saying was true: one could not judge a book by its cover. The monarch asked, "Where are they?" Zhang Dequan replied, "They are also living in this courtyard. Last night, they were tossing and turning all night. They are probably exhausted and have not gotten up yet. Do you want this servant to call them?" The monarch waved his hand. "Forget it. Let them sleep." Zhang Dequan smiled. "Yes. Help me up and help me change." "Yes, your Majesty." Zhang Dequan helped the monarch off the bed. The monarch covered his dragon's head and frowned strangely. Why did his dragon's head hurt so much? Did someone kick it? On second thought, it was impossible. He was the monarch of a country, the current emperor. Who dared to kick his butt? Hiss. It really hurt. The monarch's hair was lost when he escaped last night. As for whether it was lost when he went through the dog hole or when Gu Changfeng carried him back to the state preceptor's hall, no one remembered. He had spares, but unfortunately, they were all in the palace. He could only ask Zhang Dequan to find a bamboo hat. As soon as the monarch put on the bamboo hat, An Guogong came in a wheelchair. Zhang Dequan glanced into the courtyard and said, "Your Majesty, it's An Guogong. He came to greet me so early." "All right, let him in." Although the monarch had always been at odds with An Guogong, he would give him a chance to perform meritorious deeds for the sake of An Guogong's loyalty this time. Unexpectedly, when Zhang Dequan opened the door with a smile, An Guogong's wheelchair went straight through the door. The monarch was speechless. Zhang Dequan was speechless. An Guogong came to have breakfast with Gu Jiao, but found that Gu Jiao did not wake up. He asked the servant to push the wheelchair back and he would come back later. Zhang Dequan saw An Guogong's wheelchair turn back and said to the monarch, "He's coming." An Guogong must have come to the wrong room. The monarch straightened his face and tried not to let the bamboo hat affect his kingly aura. Then he saw An Guogong's wheelchair go through his door again. The monarch looked at Zhang Dequan angrily. Zhang Dequan smiled embarrassedly. If it was only An Guogong, it would be fine. However, the people in the courtyard woke up one after another, but no one came to greet the monarch. The monarch's face became very ugly. Zhang Dequan smiled embarrassedly and said, "You are traveling incognito. They don't know that you have moved in. They don't know you." As soon as he said that, Empress Dowager Zhuang, who was sitting under the crabapple tree and eating melon seeds, glanced at the monarch in the room and asked the maid beside her, "Hey, does the monarch of Great Yen have no hair? Why is he wearing a bamboo hat in the room?" The monarch clenched his fists. "Zhang Dequan, I want to kill you." Ant and the others learned about what happened last night from Gu Changfeng when they were eating in the central room this morning. Everyone was very calm. Empress Dowager Zhuang, "Men are all big pig trotters. Old Chancellor, they are about the same age, but they don't have as much hair as me. Madam Nan, I just invented a kind of poison and want to find someone to test it on. Master Lu, there is no good emperor. Gu Jiao didn't need to go to the military camp today, so she could sleep until the sun was high in the sky. Who would have thought that just after 9, she would be awakened by the movement in the courtyard? It wasn't Long Yi and little Jing Kong, nor was it Gu Yen and Gu Xiaoshun. It was Manager Zhang who rushed in and shouted, "Duke, it's not good. Something big happened." As it turned out, after the monarch was snatched away last night, Han She was worried that they would fight back, so she thought of countermeasures overnight. Taking great risks, she announced the imperial edict to restore Shangguan Qi to the position of crown prince in the morning court. Not only that, she also issued an imperial edict to arrest 3rd Princess Shangguan Yen and ordered rearguard and imperial army to block State Preceptor's Hall. The reason was that 3rd Princess Shangguan Yen was bewitched by State Preceptor's Hall. She was disloyal and unfilial to the monarch and framed the former crown prince. The former crown prince was wronged. The assassin in the secret room of State Preceptor's Hall that day was a conspiracy of Shangguan Yen and State Preceptor's Hall. The accomplice of the assassin was caught and confessed his crime. He also said that State Preceptor's Hall had been secretly colluding with Shangguan Yen all these years because Shangguan Qing was ill. The reason why Shangguan Yen could return to Qingdu was also the next step of both sides' plan. The assassin in Crown Prince's mansion was disguised by State Preceptor's Hall. The Imperial Mausoleum was also destroyed by State Preceptor's Hall. After Shangguan Yen returned to Qingdu, she was injured again and again. All of it was just a ruse to win the monarch's pity and sympathy. If it weren't for the fact that the monarch was busy with official business and didn't see Shangguan Yen yesterday, which made Shangguan Yen suspicious and order her men to enter the palace to secretly inquire about the monarch's movements, the monarch might not have discovered this secret. And the most important thing was, according to the confession of that man, Shangguan Yen still had a hidden card in her hand that no one knew. This hidden card was Shangguan Yan's biggest secret. Even he, a close man, didn't know about it. But what was certain was that Shangguan Yen came prepared this time. She would do whatever it took to regain everything she had lost. When Gu Jiao heard this, she couldn't help but want to clap for Imperial concubine Han. The story was so well made up that she almost believed it. This woman was really ambitious and courageous. Instead of waiting for the real monarch to enter the palace to expose her, it was better for her to make a move. In this way, even if the real monarch returned to the palace, she could say, "Shangguan Yen, is this your hidden card? For the throne, you actually found someone to pretend to be the monarch?" The smartest step in the whole plan was not to expose Shangguan Yan's ambition, but to make the State Preceptor Hall no longer clean. Originally, the State Preceptor Hall was the most valued existence by the monarch. The State Preceptor was the most qualified person to identify the real and fake monarch. But now, the State Preceptor Hall had become Shangguan Yan's accomplice in plotting a rebellion. How much credibility did his words have? The family went to the study of Feng Courtyard. Except for the children. Gu Yan and Gu Shaoshun were classified as children. Gu Yan's face was dark as he returned to his room with Gu Shaoshun. As soon as Steward Zheng left, the two of them leaned against the wall. In the study, Grand Aunt and the old Chancellor sat on the main seat. Master Nan and Master Lu sat on the left side of Grand Aunt. Dukan, Gu Jiao, and Xiao Hang sat on the right side of Grand Aunt. Gu Chengfeng didn't sit. He frowned, pinched his chin, and paced back and forth in the room. He wondered, "I don't understand. Since Han Shi has restored the position of the Crown Prince, why didn't she clear her own grievances and confer the title of Empress or something? Anyway, the monarch is in my hands. I have the imperial edict." Gu Jiao thought for a moment and said, "Han Shi thought that Yan Shang's technique was done by Wang Xianfei. To clear her grievances, she has to overthrow Wang Xianfei. But to confer the title of Empress, she has to be the enemy of the entire harem. She doesn't have the energy to do that now." Xiao Hang nodded in agreement. Moreover, the monarch in her hands is a fake. She will always feel a little guilty. Restoring the crown prince is already a risky move. She needs to observe the reaction of the imperial court. If no one doubts, she will boldly proceed to the next step. Gu Chengfeng asked, "Is there anyone in the imperial court who doubts it?" Xiao Hang shook his head. "It happened too suddenly. No one should have reacted yet. After returning and closing the door, perhaps someone will be able to sense that something is wrong. It's just that the monarch has always been temperamental. No one dares to object to any absurd decision he makes." Gu Chengfeng felt that his brain wasn't enough. Since it's like this, why is Han Shi still so careful? She should have just let the fake monarch kill us all. Xiao Hang said, "Because we have the real monarch in our hands. This is always a threat to Han Shi. Her actions today are not only to test the court officials, but also to test us. She wants to see what we will do." Gu Chengfeng made a no sound and seemed to understand. "Then what should we do?" Master Lu made a hand chop. "Charge into the palace. Kill the fake monarch." Xiao Hang shook his head again. "We can't kill him. Now that things have reached this point, it was impossible for Han Shi not to take precautions. The Imperial Guards and the Rearguard Commandery must have been waiting for a long time. Even if they had an expert like Long Yi, it was impossible to destroy an entire army. Han Shi was waiting for them to walk right into the trap. Master Lu scratched his head. "We can't kill him. Could it be that we have to confront him in court? But who would believe that the monarch in our hands is real? It's not that I want to say this, but the reputation of the third princess is indeed not very good. The crown prince is so cunning. He does evil in the dark and acts hypocritically. He is highly respected among the people. On the other hand, the third princess is a habitual rebel. No matter how you look at it, the monarch she brought is more likely to be fake." Han Shi's move was indeed too direct. There was almost no place to attack. Gu Chengfeng said unhappily, "If the Shenyuan family was still here, why would it be so troublesome? They would have directly led the Shenyuan army into the palace, captured the fake monarch, and beheaded him in public. In the end, it's all the monarch's fault. He didn't use the loyal Shenyuan family and had to support the Han family, Nangong family, and this family. In the end, when something happened, I want to see which of the 11 great families will stand out to help him. Who would believe him?" In the corridor, near the door, the monarch's face alternated between green and red. Zhang Dequan didn't even dare to breathe loudly. He didn't expect to hear such rebellious words. Although it was all true, it was also because of this that every word hit his heart. If the Shenyuan family was still standing in Shangdu, how could there be such evildoers? Shenyuan Li dared to do things that others didn't dare to do. Shenyuan Li dared to bear the crime that others didn't dare to bear. Shenyuan Li definitely wouldn't mistake him. As long as he said something, Shenyuan Li would believe him. In the end, he had destroyed his most solid shield. Your Majesty! Zhang Dequan opened his mouth and called out softly, but he didn't know how to comfort his Majesty. The monarch didn't say a word. He slowly turned around and silently returned to his room. Zhang Dequan looked at the monarch's back. When he was betrayed by his own flesh and blood, His Majesty had never been so dispirited. But when he remembered the Shenyuan family, His Majesty seemed to have changed a lot. The only Shenyuan family that could protect you was killed by you. Your Majesty, do you regret it? In the study, Gu Chengfeng was still passionately scolding the Yen monarch for being blind and suffering the consequences of his own actions. Grand Aunt nibbled on a melon seed and said faintly, "Okay, he's gone. Stop talking, it's so noisy." Gone? Gu Chengfeng sat down on the stool and let out a long sigh. Talking so much, I'm so tired. Digression, it's the last day of the month, don't waste the monthly ticket. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_826/1060895051. HTML Genius remembers the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile reading website, m. zhbqg.com. Chapter 810. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. Although it was deliberately said to the Emperor of Yen Dynasty, the content of the matter was all true. The fake emperor did issue an imperial edict to restore the crown prince, and did indeed seal the State Preceptor Hall. He wanted to investigate the State Preceptor Hall and Shangguan Yen, who was recuperating in the State Preceptor Hall. However, because of the character setting, they couldn't break too much. They couldn't exceed the limit of how they dealt with the crown prince before. Shangguan Yen was not in danger for the time being, but her personal freedom was restricted. But the imperial palace was tightly protected. They couldn't assassinate the fake emperor, nor could they lead any army to clean up the emperor's side. These were all facts. Gu Chengfeng poured himself a cup of tea, gulped down a few mouthfuls, and said, "Then what should we do next? The crown prince has been restored. This fake emperor will definitely do more evil things. Wait first," Grand Aunt said while eating melon seeds. Gu Chengfeng was stunned. Still wait. Grand Aunt glanced at the opposite house and casually said, "Let him regret for a few more days." When such a thing happened, the most anxious one was not them, but the Emperor of Yen Dynasty. They must make him deeply aware of the mistakes he made in the past and taste the bitter fruit he planted. In addition, there was another important reason for doing this. The Han family made such a big move in order to force them and the Emperor to make a move. But if they didn't make a move, the Han family would not be able to understand their thoughts. The unknown was the most terrible thing. The more they didn't make a move, the more the Han family would suspect that they were brewing a bigger revenge. Before they figured out their trump card, the Han family would not blindly launch a second attack. For them, this could be regarded as a chance to breathe and plan again. "By the way, will the young royal princess be okay?" Gu Chengfeng asked. Gu Jiao shook her head. "She will be fine. The emperor loves the young royal princess the most. No matter what the purpose is, The fake emperor will not do anything bad to the young royal princess. Imperial Palace. Lingbo Academy had 2 days off. The young royal princess obediently stayed in the palace for these 2 days. The people in the palace had changed a lot, but the maidservants and wet nurses by her side had not been changed. She had just eaten lunch, and the wet nurse had gone to prepare her clothes for the new season. Children grew quickly, and last year's clothes could no longer be worn. Nanny. The young princess appeared at the door, hugging a small pillow. The wet nurse smiled. Young princess, why are you here? Didn't you go to take a nap? The young princess walked in while panting. She hugged a small pillow and looked at her. Can I sleep here? The wet nurse was stunned for a moment before she smiled and said, That's fine, but why does the young princess want to sleep here? The young princess clumsily climbed onto the bed and placed her small pillow next to the wet nurse's pillow. She lowered her small head and said, I don't want to sleep with uncle. He's a bad person. The wet nurse jumped in fright and hastily walked to the door. She looked outside and closed the door. She returned to the bedside and sat down. She said in a low voice, Xiao Junju, you can't speak carelessly like that. His Majesty loves you the most. You can't say that about His Majesty. The young princess said, He's not my uncle. The wet nurse's face turned pale. Princess. The young princess was sleepy. She laid her small body on the pillow and fell asleep. The wet nurse looked at the sleeping figure of the young princess and broke out in cold sweat. She covered the young princess with a thin blanket and walked out of the room quietly. Chief Steward, you had been waiting outside for a long time. She was not surprised. She calmly bowed and said, Eunuch. Chief Steward, you asked indifferently, what did the young princess say? The wet nurse respectfully replied, The young princess said that she doesn't want to sleep with His Majesty. His Majesty is a bad person. She also said that His Majesty is not her uncle. Chief Steward Yu smiled brightly. What do you think? The wet nurse smiled and said, I think His Majesty has been busy with official business recently and neglected her. When a child's temper flares up, she doesn't even recognize her parents, let alone her uncle. Speaking of which, the young princess has been spoiled by His Majesty. Other children wouldn't dare to be angry with His Majesty. Chief Steward Yu smiled with satisfaction. It's good that Lu Mama understands. The wet nurse said, Eunuch Yu, please don't worry. I am loyal to you. Chief Steward Yu said, Zhang Dequan has no ability. He can't even give you a decent official position. I am different. You can work under me with peace of mind. In the future, you will benefit a lot. The wet nurse bowed gratefully and said, This servant will remember this. Eunuch Yu, the young princess has a bad temper. When she makes a fuss, there will be no end to it. I am afraid that she will offend His Majesty. Why don't you let her rest at my place for the next 2 days? Chief Steward Yu said, That's good. His Majesty has been busy with official business recently and has no time to take care of the young princess. However, I will say the ugly words first. I will leave the young princess to you. You have to serve her carefully and don't cause any trouble. Otherwise, you know my methods. The wet nurse said in fear and trepidation, I will not let you down. Chief Steward Yu nodded and left with satisfaction. The wet nurse returned to the house and looked lovingly at the young princess who was safe and sound. She sighed in relief. The Imperial Preceptor Hall was blocked by the Imperial Guards. Not a single disciple of the Imperial Preceptor Hall could leave. Yuhi brought several junior brothers to the entrance of the Imperial Preceptor Hall. He looked at the Imperial Guards and said, Who gave you the right to block the Imperial Preceptor Hall? This kind of thing should have been handled by the eldest disciple, Yi Qing. However, Yi Qing was seriously injured and was recuperating in the purple bamboo forest. The leader of the Imperial Guards spread out the Imperial Edict in his hand and said arrogantly, Open your dog eyes and see what this is. Yuhi opened his eyes in disbelief. How could it be? The Imperial Guard raised his eyebrows and said, Your Imperial Preceptor Hall colluded with the third princess to plot against us. We are also under the Imperial Edict to investigate. If you have any dissatisfaction, go and report it to the imperial court. A young disciple said angrily, "Then you should give us a chance to report it. Why are you guarding the door and not letting us out?" The imperial guard said, "This is an imperial edict." You. The young disciple was angry. He stopped his junior brother and looked coldly at the imperial guard. He said, "Forget it, let's go." The young disciple asked in a low voice, "Senior brother Yu-He, did master really collude with the third princess?" Yu-He stopped and looked at his junior brothers with a frown. He said seriously, "You have to believe in master. Master will never do anything bad to the imperial court." In the purple bamboo forest, in a bright and spacious central room, the imperial preceptor and an old man with a white beard were sitting opposite each other and playing chess. The old man was none other than the chess sage of the 6 kingdoms, Mr. Meng. Mr. Meng put down a white chess piece. "Sigh, I came at a bad time. Even I can't get out." The imperial preceptor smiled faintly and put down a black chess piece. "Isn't that good? Accompany me to play chess for 3 days and 3 nights. Mr. Meng snorted. "That's too easy for you." The imperial preceptor smiled and continued to play chess. Mr. Meng asked calmly, "Aren't you worried?" "Worried about what?" the imperial preceptor asked. Mr. Meng said, "I'm worried that the imperial preceptor hall built by that person will be destroyed in your hands." The imperial preceptor's hand that was holding the chess piece paused. After a long time, he put down a chess piece. "No, even if the Great Yen is destroyed, the imperial preceptor hall will not be destroyed." At dusk, little Jing Kong, who had been playing outside with Long Yi for a whole day, finally came back sweating. Gu Jiao was collecting medicinal herbs in the courtyard. He plunged into the bosom of Gu Jiao and said, "Jiao Jiao, I'm so tired." Gu Jiao took a towel and wiped the sweat on his forehead. Then, "Do you want to go out with Long Yi next time?" Little Jing Kong, "Yes." Gu Jiao found it funny. Little Jing Kong raised his little chin and proudly exposed his little neck. "And here." Gu Jiao wiped his little neck. Thinking of something, little Jing Kong asked, "But Jiao Jiao, why is Long Yi in a daze?" Gu Jiao was slightly surprised. Little Jing Kong raised his hand and pointed at the roof. Gu Jiao looked over and saw Long Yi sitting cross-legged on the eaves against the twilight. His black hair was gently blown by the evening breeze, and his tall figure was illuminated by the setting sun, making him look lonely. He was holding that black jade thumb ring in his hand. Gu Jiao understood that he was thinking about who she was. In the dead of night, 1, 2, 3 heads popped out from the alley diagonally opposite the Crown Prince Mansion. The head at the bottom belonged to Gu Changfeng. The head at the top belonged to Long Yi. Gu Jiao opened her eyes wide and looked at the imperial guards surrounding the Crown Prince Mansion. She blinked and said, "Oh, so many people." Gu Changfeng had a headache. "Are you sure we can catch the Crown Prince under the eyes of so many imperial guards?" No matter how good the 3 of them were at fighting, they couldn't defeat an entire army. Gu Jiao said, "Who wants to enter the Crown Prince Mansion to catch him?" Little Joe. Little Joe hovered in the air and flew into the Crown Prince Mansion. Digression. Today, when I was watching the Olympic equestrian competition, I was thinking that if little Shi participated in the dressage competition, it would give the feeling of a bullfight. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more wonderful content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that you can't find on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/896428266/1060688783. HTML Genius remembered this website's address in a second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 8:11. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more wonderful content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. The novels that can't be found on the internet are all available here. At this time, the people in the Crown Prince's mansion went to bed one after another. Crown Prince Shangguan-Chi was too excited to sleep and went to the study room. He didn't expect that good luck would come so quickly. He said he would turn over. He thought that with Shangguan Yan's interference, he would have to be silent for at least several years before he could make a comeback. Sure enough, the heavens are helping me. The Crown Prince couldn't hide his smile and looked at the people at the door with a bit more pleasure. It's getting late, you should go and rest. The guards cupped their fists. We are not tired. There are so many Imperial guards outside, no one will break in. Your Highness is right, but it's better to be safe than sorry. The Crown Prince was so happy that he almost forgot himself. At this time, after listening to the guard's words, his mood calmed down. That's right. At this critical juncture, he had to be even more careful. Your Highness, you should go and rest. Don't you have to go to the morning court tomorrow? Speaking of this, the Crown Prince's smile once again appeared on his lips. That's right, he can go to the morning court again. Those who wanted to see him and the Han family make a fool of themselves were finally shocked. However, he really couldn't sleep at this time. He took out a few books and decided to review the way of governing a country. Suddenly, a big bird landed on his windowsill. The Crown Prince was about to call the guards, but found that the bird was unusually obedient and didn't have any aggressive attitude. Moreover, the bird stretched out a bird's claw with an arrogant expression as if to say, "Welcome." Why do I think a bird has an expression? Am I crazy? The Crown Prince's gaze fell on the bird's claw and unexpectedly saw a note tied to it. Is this a note from the Han family? The Crown Prince muttered and glanced at little Joe. The Han family no longer uses carrier pigeons, but instead uses eagles? The Crown Prince was full of doubts as he tore down the note and saw that it was written in black and white. Come to the cold palace quickly and disguise yourself. Don't let people find out. There was no signature. But the Crown Prince recognized the handwriting, it was clearly his mother's. It's so late, why did his mother let him disguise himself and go to the cold palace? Did something happen? That's not right. This morning, Lady Mother had sent someone to tell him not to go to the cold palace if there was nothing important. She also didn't need to gather the courtiers to plead on her behalf. The Crown Prince looked at the note. Something is fishy. In the alley. Gu Qingfeng's neck was about to break. Can the weight of both of you not be on my head alone? Gu Jiao. No. Long Yi. Oh. Gu Changfeng. Gu Qingfeng's face darkened. His slender little neck bore a weight that shouldn't be borne at his age. Oh, why aren't they out yet? Gu Jiao asked. Could it be that he saw through it? Gu Changfeng said, We don't know if Han Shi told him anything. If Han Shi said she wouldn't contact him, he wouldn't be so easily fooled. Before Gu Changfeng could finish speaking, Long Yi straightened his body and stared at a certain direction in the dim light of night. Gu Jiao also straightened up. The two big mountains pressing down on his head disappeared. Gu Qingfeng's neck lightened and his breathing became smooth. Long Yi, what's wrong? Gu Jiao asked. Long Yi picked up Gu Jiao and flew towards the dim light of night. Gu Changfeng used his qinggong to keep up. The three people arrived at the back door of the Crown Prince's mansion. At this moment, an inconspicuous carriage slowly drove out. The coachman was dressed as a eunuch. He was a death soldier with high martial arts. Gu Jiao's lips curled. It seemed the Crown Prince had taken the bait. The Crown Prince was not so careless in the past. He was so happy to regain his position as the Crown Prince that he easily fell into the trap. In order to not let people find out, he naturally couldn't bring a mighty army with him. He brought 10 embroidered uniform guards to protect him in the dark. This lineup was enough to deal with ordinary experts, but if they wanted to take advantage of Long Yi, they were still underestimating the enemy. Or perhaps, Han Shi and An Han basically didn't have time to mention Long Yi to the Crown Prince. The carriage drove on the quiet street. In order to not attract attention, the Crown Prince specially chose a remote street as the route. This actually made it convenient for them. The 10 embroidered uniform guards jumped on both sides of the eaves. Show. One was missing. Show. Another one was missing. The leader of the embroidered uniform guards on the left side turned around. 1, 2, 3, 4. Turning around again, 1, 2, 3. Turning around again, 1, 2. He felt a chill in his heart and turned around for the 4th time. Long Yi. Ha ha ha. The hair of the embroidered uniform guards stood erect. They pulled out their swords and shouted, "Protect! Protect your uncle!" Gu Jiao jumped out from behind Long Yi. Holding a small stick, she knocked him unconscious. These embroidered uniform guards were not too difficult to deal with. In less than half an hour, all 10 of them were knocked unconscious. Gu Chengfeng went straight to the Crown Prince's carriage. The coachman's complexion changed and he hurriedly pulled out the sword at his waist. Who would have thought that before he could pull it out, Gu Chengfeng blocked his throat with a dart. Gu Chengfeng was surprised. Wow, the hidden weapon given by Master's wife Nan is really useful. The coachman fell from the carriage and hit the ground with a bang. The horse was frightened. It raised its front hooves and scurried around. The Crown Prince was jolted and his whole body hit the wall of the carriage. He held onto the wall of the car to stabilize his body. He covered his aching forehead and coldly asked, "What happened?" Gu Chengfeng sat on the coachman's seat and grabbed the reins to calm the horse down. He faintly smiled and said, "Nothing, Crown Prince, sit tight." This voice was not right. The Crown Prince suddenly opened the curtain. Coincidentally, at this time, Long Yi and Gu Jiao landed on the outer seat of the carriage. Gu Jiao hit the Crown Prince in the face. The Crown Prince's eyes rolled back and he fainted. Gu Chengfeng drove the carriage while looking at the Crown Prince who had a nosebleed. He asked, "No, why did you hit him?" Gu Jiao paused. "Oh, I forgot. There was no need to hit him." Gu Chengfeng helplessly sighed. Forget it. If he fainted, then he fainted. Let's bring him back first." And Gu Jiao seriously nodded her head. Long Yi sat on the roof of the carriage. Gu Jiao and Gu Chengfeng sat on the outer seat. The Crown Prince was lying on the floor of the carriage. No one cared about him. His nose was bruised and his face was swollen. Passing by a quiet street, Long Yi heard the sound of fierce fighting. Long Yi didn't move. He was not interested in other people's fighting. Soon, Gu Jiao and Gu Chengfeng also heard it. Gu Chengfeng was born to enjoy the lively scene. He couldn't help but ask, "Who is it? Why is there such a strong murderous aura in the middle of the night?" Gu Jiao carefully listened and said, "It seems to be the voice of Qing Feng Taoist and Liaochen." Liaochen? Gu Chengfeng frowned. Is it that master of Jing Kong who doesn't show his face for 10,000 years? That monk of Shenyuan family? Oh, more or less. Gu Jiao nodded her head. That guy couldn't be counted as a real monk. Gu Chengfeng wanted to ask whether they should go and take a look. As a result, he saw Long Yi, who never meddled in other people's business, disappear. He went to the street where the 2 people were fighting. Gu Chengfeng was dumbfounded. What's he doing? Gu Jiao blinked. Oh no, he heard the master of Jing Kong. He's going to help Liaochen. Taoist Qing Feng and Liaochen were in the middle of a fierce battle. Suddenly, a tall and powerful figure came from the sky. It was a Taoist priest with hair. It was a monk without hair. Long Yi found his target and threw a punch at Taoist Qing Feng. Taoist Qing Feng's eyes trembled. He hurriedly withdrew his killing move against Liaochen and jumped up, dodging Long Yi's attack. Long Yi's fist smashed into the stone pillar behind him, and several cracks appeared on it. Taoist Qing Feng stood on the roof and looked at the unexpected helper with a serious expression. He glanced at Liaochen and said, "I'll kill you next time." Then, he turned and disappeared into the night. Liao Chen turned around and his eyes fell on Long Yi. Long Yi was tall and wore a mask with fangs. He carried a long sword on his back and looked fierce. But just now, this man, or rather, this man of sacrifice had helped him. Liao Chen said calmly, "I didn't need your help, but thank you anyway." "Oh, really? If it wasn't for Long Yi, you would have been beaten up again." Gu Jiao jumped down from the carriage. Liao Chen snorted, "I didn't kill him." This was the truth. Taoist Qing Feng really wanted to kill Liao Chen. Liao Chen only used a few killing moves when he was annoyed. Generally speaking, he didn't go hard on him. Long Yi, Gu Changfeng, Gu Jiao introduced them. Gu Changfeng stepped down and greeted Liao Chen. "I heard you're the master of Jing Kong. I've heard so much about you." Liao Chen smiled, his peach blossom eyes sparkling. "You're welcome." Gu Changfeng was stunned. Was it good for a monk to look so seductive? Liao Chen was more interested in Long Yi. Where did this man of sacrifice come from? He seems to be quite skilled. Gu Jiao said, "Why don't you guess?" Liao Chen spread out his hands and sighed. "I can't guess." Gu Jiao crossed her arms. "Then guess slowly." "I won't tell you." Liao Chen clicked his tongue and said with a faint smile, "Girl, you're not honest." Pa. Long Yi's jade thumb ring fell to the ground. He didn't know what kind of craftsmanship this jade thumb ring was made of, but it didn't break so easily. Long Yi bent down and picked up the jade thumb ring. Liao Chen's expression changed when he saw the jade thumb ring. He quickly stepped forward and reached out to grab the jade thumb ring in Long Yi's hand. Long Yi was a person with clear boundaries. Only Princess Xinyang, Xiao Hang, and Gu Jiao could touch his personal things. Now, he could barely count them as little Jing Kong. Liao Chen was obviously not in this range. Long Yi slapped at Liao Chen. Liao Chen was struck by a palm strike. The instant he was sent flying, he flicked his sleeve and removed Long Yi's mask. Soon after, Liao Chen saw a face that he would recognize even if it turned into ashes. However, the first thing he saw was the face of a youth. The youth held a long sword in his hand. He looked like a young hero of Jianghu, but he was colder and more ruthless than a chivalrous hero. "I will take your life today. If you have any last words, you can say them now. If I can do it, I will do it for you." The youth's voice was clear and cold without a trace of emotion. "It seems I don't have a choice. I only have one request. Let my son go. He is only 8 years old. Please don't hurt him." "Okay, I promise you." The youth agreed. "Father, don't. Zheng go forward. Don't look back." "Father. Father. Father. Digression. A new month has begun. Looking for a guaranteed monthly vote, the latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642-826467105. HTML Genius 1 second. Remember the website address. www.zhhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 812. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more wonderful content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all here. This sudden unforeseen event made Gu Jiao and Gu Changfeng both stunned. Gu Changfeng understood Long Yi's temperament. This guy didn't want strangers to get close to him. If it wasn't Xiao Hang and this little girl, it was best not to provoke him. Was Liao Chen crazy? He actually dared to steal from Long Yi? No, why did he want to steal from Long Yi? He also took off Long Yi's mask. Long Yi, Gu Qingfeng's gaze involuntarily fell on Long Yi's handsome face. Ah! He was stunned all of a sudden. Did Long Yi look like this? He had always thought that Shadow Guard Long wore a mask because he was ugly, but it turned out that he was handsome. This handsome was too tragic. Long Yi's handsomeness had a trace of Jiang Hu's chivalrous aura, but it also lacked the worldly aura and had a trace of an expert's natural airhead. Gu Chengfeng looked at Long Yi and then looked at Liao Chen. He couldn't help but mutter in his heart, "What's going on? Do all the experts nowadays rely on their faces? You're making me seem very ordinary." Gu Qingfeng's main point was completely off topic, mainly because he didn't think that the two of them could really fight. Okay, Master of Jing Kong, if you want to see Long Yi's things, you have to tell this little girl to go find Long Yi, understand? He used his hand to cover the other side of his mouth and whispered to Liao Chen, "I'm telling you, Long Yi is a little stingy." However, Liao Chen's mind had long since stopped hearing anything. His eyes were full of killing intent that even Gu Jiao had never seen before. Even when he was in the brocade guard of the Crown Prince's mansion, he had never been so murderous. Gu Jiao looked at Liao Chen strangely. Liao Chen stood up from the ground and stared straight at Long Yi. At this time, Long Yi had already put on his mask again. But what was the use of this? That face, he had already remembered it. "I'm going to kill you." He fiercely stomped his feet and flew up, attacking Long Yi's life gate. Gu Qingfeng's expression, "Hey, are you serious? Are you serious? Didn't Long Yi just push you? Was it necessary? You were the one who snatched his stuff first." One was his master from Jing Kong, and the other was Long Yi. It was really difficult to mediate between them. He would never admit that it was because his martial arts skills were too low that he could not persuade him. Liao Chen's all-out attack actually forced Long Yi to retreat several steps. Liao Chen really wanted to kill Long Yi, so he used all of his power. Under this obsession to kill Long Yi, he displayed an unimaginable strength. Long Yi didn't receive the order to kill Lu Chen, so for the time being, he didn't have such a big killing intent. Liao Chen closed in step by step. If this continued, both of them would be injured. "Stop!" Gu Jiao rushed over. "Get out of the way!" Liao Chen glared angrily. With a flick of his sleeve, he sent out a wave of internal force, shaking Gu Jiao to the side. This attack didn't hurt Gu Jiao, but in Long Yi's eyes, it was Gu Jiao who was attacked. Long Yi's aura suddenly changed. When Liao Chen attacked him again, he didn't dodge. Instead, he met it with a punch. Fist and palm met, and a terrifying wave of internal force exploded on the street. Gu Qingfeng's feet moved, and the sand and stones that had been shattered by their internal force fell to the ground where he had been standing. Liao Chen spat out a mouthful of blood, and Long Yi was slightly injured. If this was a normal fight, Liao Chen wouldn't have been able to hurt Long Yi, but the huge hatred had stimulated all of his potential. He wanted to die with Long Yi. "You two leave." He didn't want to hurt the innocent. "Long Yi, let's go back," Gu Jiao said to Long Yi. "Don't fight with him." Long Yi's murderous aura came and went quickly. If Gu Jiao said not to fight, then they wouldn't fight. Liao Chen's eyes were like torches as he looked at Long Yi's back. "He's not allowed to leave." Liao Chen jumped up and used all of his internal force to form the momentum of a fierce tiger. High in the air, he fiercely slapped at Long Yi's back. Gu Jiao said not to fight. Just like when Xiao Hang played with him when he was a child, he really could stay still for 2 hours if he didn't move. Liao Chen's eyes flashed with surprise. This guy wasn't going to fight back? Was he going to take this hit? No matter how powerful an expert was, if they took this hit, their heart and lungs would be damaged. Long Yi didn't make a move. Liao Chen's palm was about to land on his back and injure his heart. Suddenly, a cute, evil voice came from the end of the street. "Master!" Liao Chen's aura stagnated, and he fell from the air. He fell flat on his face. Little Jing Kong let go of Xiao Heng's hand and ran over. "Jiao Jiao! Long Yi! After greeting the two, he turned around, squatted down, and grew a little mushroom beside his master. "Master, why did you fall again?" Liao Chen was facing down, and his hands were firmly grasping the ground. He gritted his teeth and his whole body was trembling. "How did I fall? You don't know how I fell? Little monk, can't you live if you don't trick your master? You're an adult. Anyway, I don't have the strength to help you up. Master, you can get up by yourself." After saying that, the little guy decisively left his master and happily went to find Gu Jiao. Liao Chen. A grown disciple can't be kept at home. Gu Jiao rubbed his little head, and looking at Xiao Hang who was walking over, she asked, "Why are you here?" Xiao Hang raised his eyebrows and looked at the little guy. The little guy shook his head and said, "It's not that I want to eat Tonghulu." Now, whenever Long Yi saw Xiao Hang and little Jing Kong in the same frame, he wouldn't easily crash. However, whether he still treated little Jing Kong as Xiao Hang or not, only he knew in his heart. "Long Yi, you and Jing Kong get on the carriage first," Xiao Hang said to Long Yi. Long Yi picked up the little guy, and without saying anything, he got on Xiao Hang's carriage. The carriage of Xiao Hang stopped beside the carriage of Crown Prince, and when Long Yi was walking in front of the carriage of Crown Prince just happened to wake up, and just after he yelled, "Someone," Long Yi didn't even raise his eyelids, and hit him with internal force, knocking him out again. Long Yi carried little Jing Kong and got on the carriage. Only Xiao Hang, Gu Jiao, Gu Chengfeng, and Liao Chen were left in the alley. Liao Chen stood up with his body that had almost fallen apart. He didn't fight with Long Yi, but he was beaten black and blue by his disciple. Where could he go to reason? He raised his hand to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth, and coldly looked at the three people in front of him. "What is the relationship between you and that guy called Long Yi?" Gu Jiao said seriously to Liao Chen, "He's our friend." "Friend?" Liao Chen looked at little Jing Kong, who was sitting in the carriage and chattering away. Then, he looked at the Dragon 1 brand humanoid receiver beside little Jing Kong. He clenched his fist and said, "A person like him doesn't deserve to have friends." Xiao Heng frowned. Gu Jiao said, "You seem to know Long Yi, and you know his past." Liao Chen said coldly, "Of course I know him. Even if he turned into ashes, I would still know him." Xiao Hang stared at him and said, "In fact, I have always wanted to know your identity. You can't be unrelated to the Shenyuan family, but I couldn't find you in the Shenyuan family's portrait and genealogy. Third Princess and Duke Ongwa have also never heard of a person called Shenyuan Zheng. So, who are you?" Liao Chen coldly snorted and said, "Who I am is not important. If you still want Jing Kong to live, you better let me kill him." He didn't say that he would let Xiao Hang and Gu Jiao kill him because Gu Jiao said that Long Yi was their friend, so he wouldn't let Gu Jiao make things difficult for him. He would do it himself. Xiao Hang glanced at Liao Chen and said, "You can't kill him." He had watched Long Yi grow up, and his relationship with Long Yi surpassed all other relationships in the world. He absolutely could not stand on Long Yi's side. He would never allow anyone to hurt Long Yi. Liao Chen's peach blossom eyes were filled with monstrous hatred. "I can't kill him tonight, but one day, I will kill him with my own hands." Gu Jiao said, "He doesn't remember the past." Liao Chen sneered and said, "Is that so? Then I'm not surprised. No wonder a cold-blooded killer would become like this. But even if he doesn't remember, he can't erase the sins he once committed. Tell him to be careful. I will take his life." After saying that, he turned and left without looking back. Looking at the empty street corner, Gu Changfeng patted his chest and said in confusion, "What's going on? Jing Kong's master and Long Yi are mortal enemies?" Gu Jiao and Xiao Hang both looked in the direction Liao Chen left. Gu Jiao said, "It seems he doesn't want to talk about the past." Xiao Hang said with a serious expression, "Because that is his most painful memory." Gu Jiao was puzzled. She looked at him and asked, "Do you know something?" Xiao Hang also looked at her with a gentle gaze. I just confirmed it. It was just a guess. Then tell me, I want to hear it. Gu Jiao pulled his hand and said. Xiao Hang gently looked at her and held her hand. Okay. Gu Chengfeng, hello? Is there someone else here? Can you two not treat me like I'm air? Don't make eyes in front of me. The two carriages moved slowly. The two of them followed beside the first carriage at a leisurely pace. Gu Chengfeng rolled his eyes and sat in the second carriage. Xiao Hang said softly, "It all started with the Shenyuan family more than 30 years ago. At that time, the Shenyuan family was also a military family, but it was not as powerful as it was later." Gu Jiao nodded. "I've heard that the Shenyuan family gradually became powerful under Shenyuan Li's leadership. The Black Wind Camp was also founded by Shenyuan Li." Xiao Hang shook his head. "But that's not the case." "Ha!" Gu Jiao looked at him blankly. Xiao Hang smiled and rubbed the little strand of hair on her head. He said, "The founder of the Black Wind Camp was someone else. The most powerful person in the Shenyuan family was not Shenyuan Li, but the first leader of the Black Wind Camp. He was also the Master of Shadows of the Shenyuan family. He was the real military soul of the Shenyuan family." Gu Jiao touched her chin. "Master of Shadows? The name sounds very cool. What kind of person was he?" Xiao Hang said, "I don't know what kind of person he was, but I know that he was also the founder of the State Preceptor Hall." Gu Jiao couldn't help but think of the faceless portrait. Could it be that person? If it was him, then he must be the third clay figurine that sat with Shenyuan Li and the State Preceptor. She remembered that the State Preceptor said that the person was both a teacher and a friend. Xiao Hang saw that she was listening seriously and continued, "The Master of Shadows never appeared in the open, but he wrote the 6 books of the Yen Kingdom. He founded the State Preceptor Hall and the Black Wind Camp. He also left behind countless riches. He and Shenyuan Li fought everywhere, but he was always in the dark. He didn't leave his name on the battlefield, so everyone only thought of him as a powerful soldier and didn't think much of the rest. But in the end, this secret was still discovered. The royal families of Jin and Liang began to think of ways to win him over. If they couldn't win him over, they decided to get rid of him. Who would have thought that one day, he would suddenly disappear? Everyone guessed that he was either dead or found a place to hide. Gu Jiao asked, "What does this have to do with Liaochen?" Although she saw some things in the dream, it wasn't everything. At least, the part about Liaochen was only the ending and not the past. Xiao Hang paused and said, "Liaochen's father is the second Master of Shadows." Gu Jiao asked, "That person's son?" Xiao Hang shook his head again. "No, that person is not a member of the Shenyuan family. Liaochen's father is. But the Master of Shadows acts in the dark and can't come out in the open. This is the rule he set. Shenyuan Li's younger brother, Shenyuan Qi, faked his death and became the second Master of Shadows of the Shenyuan family. Only the patriarchs of the Shenyuan family know about the existence of this dark force. Therefore, Ongwa Duke, my mother, and even Shenyuan Li's eldest son, Shenyuan Cheng, don't know about it. 20 years ago, Shenyuan Qi took Shenyuan Zheng, who was only 8 years old, to Zhao country to find a kind of medicinal herb. On the way, Shenyuan Qi encountered an assassin and died. From Liaochen's reaction, that assassin was Long Yi. Although Long Yi killed Shenyuan Qi, he also paid a great price. He lost all his memories and became half stupid and half stupid. Digression. Long Yi, you are stupid. Lu Lu Lu. 3 votes to 200. Do you still have monthly votes? Let's break 100. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more wonderful content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642-826/1060611820. HTML Genius remembered this site's address in a second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website, zhhbqg.com. Chapter 813. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. Long Yi. Little Jing Kong was carried on Long Yi's back as he leaped onto roofs and vaulted over walls. The feeling of whistling through the night wind made him feel extremely cool. Not only was he not afraid, but he was so excited that he shouted loudly. Long Yi was wearing a mask, so people couldn't see the expression on his face, but Gu Jiao could feel that his heart was relaxed. He was also very happy. In the days of being an assassin, there was only endless killing. Although he had forgotten the past, this kind of life was also pure and beautiful. Gu Jiao looked at one big and one small jumping up and down in the night and said with emotion, "They are really carefree." After listening for so long, Gu Chengfeng's ears were almost pricked up like a donkey's ears. He finally couldn't help but say, "They are very carefree now, but have you thought about it? Liao Chen's father is dead, and Liao Chen is very likely to be the third Lord of Shadows. He became a monk, but he didn't get married or leave any descendants. Jing Kong might be the fourth. If Long Yi's mission is to kill the Lord of Shadows, then once Long Yi recovers his memory, it is very likely that he will attack the two of them." As he spoke, he paused for a moment and looked at Xiao Hang with a gaze that carried a trace of sympathy. "Don't think that you're lucky. The blood of the Shenyuan family flows in your veins as well. Perhaps he'll kill you as well when the time comes. In my opinion, you should not help Long Yi recover his memory. He is very good like this." Xiao Hang and Gu Jiao looked at Long Yi, who was carrying little Jing Kong in the night at the same time. They didn't know whether it was an illusion or not, but there was a huge sense of loneliness in his body. A person who didn't know who he was, where he came from, where he was going, and what kind of mission and purpose he had, seemed to be excluded from the whole world. When he thought that he was a dragon shadow guard, he didn't have such confusion. But now he knew that he was not a dragon shadow guard. Looking at the tall and lonely back view of Long Yi, Xiao Heng said, "He has the right to know who he is." Gu Chengfeng shook his head in disbelief. "You're crazy, you're really crazy. Don't you know that he's the Sky Splitter? The #1 assassin of the 6 nations who could defeat an Hun. He became famous at the age of 13, and was already a killing god that struck fear in people's hearts. Once he recovers his memories, all of you will die." He looked at Gu Jiao and said, "Why don't you persuade him? You've seen Long Yi take action. When that guy is ruthless, no one can survive." Gu Jiao held Xiao Heng's warm big palm with one hand, and stroking her delicate little chin with the other hand, she said, "How about teaching Long Yi how to speak first?" Gu Chengfeng, the crown prince, was brought back to the public house. Gu Jiao wasn't polite at all and directly splashed him with a basin of cold water. The crown prince quivered and was about to sit up and shout angrily when he saw that Gu Jiao had already lifted her leg. He silently swallowed the words that had slipped out of his mouth. There were only Gu Jiao and Gu Chengfeng in the room. The crown prince had never seen Gu Chengfeng's face, but he had seen Gu Jiao's face. His expression became cold and he said sternly, "Xiao Lulang, how dare you? You actually kidnapped the crown prince of Great Yen." Gu Jiao ignored him and only gave Gu Chengfeng a small glance. "Quickly take him away. Annoying." Gu Chengfeng took the crown prince to the next room. It was already late at night, and everyone in the courtyard was asleep. Little Jing Kong also fell asleep on Long Yi's back on the way back. But the monarch was still awake. Gu Chengfeng pushed him into the room and turned around to leave. "You father and son have a good talk, I'm leaving first." He turned around and went into his room. Together with Gu Jiao, he stuck his ear to the wall. The oil lamp in the room was dim and emitted a faint fragrance of wine and medicine. The monarch was wearing a bamboo hat and sitting on an armchair in front of the window. His face was covered by the light and shadow, but his pair of sharp eyes were emitting sharp waves of light. The Crown Prince didn't see clearly at first glance. He straightened his body and arrogantly asked, "Who are you? Why did you capture me?" The monarch slapped the table and released his emperor's aura, "Bold unfilial son." The Crown Prince was so scared by this familiar shout that his legs softened and he knelt on the ground. "Father Emperor?" Now that the angle had changed, he could finally see the face under the bamboo hat. Yes, it was his father Emperor. The Crown Prince asked cautiously, "Father Emperor, did you ask Xiao Lulang to capture me? Where is this? Why did Father Emperor capture me?" The monarch saw the Crown Prince's confusion and knew that he didn't know about the real and fake monarch. This meant that he didn't participate in this matter. This knowledge made the monarch feel a little better. The monarch said calmly, "You don't need to know where this is. You just need to remember what I'm going to say to you." The Crown Prince said respectfully, "Father Emperor, please speak." The monarch said seriously, "Your mother Han conspired to rebel. I was persecuted by her and was no longer in the palace last night." Each of the 3 short sentences was like a bolt from the blue, striking the Crown Prince until he was dazed. The Crown Prince raised his head in disbelief and looked at the monarch. "Father Emperor, what are you talking about? Why can't I understand? Mother conspired to harm you. Are you talking about the Yen Shang technique? Imperial Father, please be clear about this. Mother was wrongly accused. She was framed by a traitor. She never thought of being disloyal to you." The monarch looked at him and asked in a deep voice, "Then how do you think I left the palace?" The Crown Prince was stunned and didn't understand the monarch's meaning. "Yes. Father Emperor just said that he was no longer in the palace last night." "That's not right. Father Emperor went to the court this morning and issued an imperial edict to restore him to the position of Crown Prince." The monarch looked at the Crown Prince deeply and said, "The monarch in the palace is fake." The Crown Prince's heart once again suffered a heavy blow. The one in the palace is fake. Then, the imperial edict to restore him to the position of Crown Prince is fake? He was wondering how he could turn things around so quickly. Father Emperor didn't want to restore him, nor did he want to investigate the State Preceptor Hall and Shangguan Yen. It was all his mother's plan. No, it's not like this. I don't believe it." He muttered and stood up, looking at the monarch in the light with a very strange look. "My mother will not do anything to betray Father Emperor." The monarch looked straight at him. "Then how do you explain the fact that there is an additional monarch in the palace? You don't think that at this time, I secretly left the palace and played a show of 2 monarchs to deceive you, right?" The monarch didn't need to go through so much trouble to deal with the Crown Prince and Han. The Crown Prince was instantly speechless. But he still couldn't accept the fact that he was conferred the title of Crown Prince by a fake imperial edict. He flew back to the clouds with great difficulty. He didn't want to fall again. The Crown Prince clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. No, my Father Emperor is not fake. If there are really 2 monarchs, then the fake one must be you. My Father Emperor hates Xiao Lulang the most. Xiao Lulang is arrogant and has no regard for the imperial power. He never kneels when he sees my Father Emperor. He also colludes with Ngua Gong. This is also the object of my Father Emperor's disgust. In addition, he is from a lower country. How can he defeat so many outstanding children of the upper country and win the position of commander of the Black Wind Cavalry? All of these are things that my Father Emperor can't tolerate. If it is as you said, you are my Father Emperor, you will never go to Xiao Lulang even if you were forced out of the palace. My Father Emperor trusts the Wang family the most. The first person he should go to is Wang Su. You exposed yourself, didn't you? Although I don't know what method Xiao Lulang used to find someone with such a similar appearance and voice to pretend to be my Father Emperor, a fake is a fake. I advise you not to help the evildoer. Otherwise, with my Father Emperor's methods, you will suffer a fate worse than death. After hearing the Crown Prince's eloquent words, the monarch didn't immediately refute. Instead, he fell into silence. The room suddenly quieted down. The Crown Prince didn't know if it was because his ears were buzzing. He could only hear his heavy breathing and his thumping heart. So, in your heart, I am this kind of person. In the darkness, the monarch's disappointed voice sounded. The crown prince's heart skipped a beat. He almost wanted to shout something, but he held it back. The last glimmer of light in the monarch's eyes also dimmed. Even if the crown prince could call him Father Emperor, he wouldn't be completely disappointed. Look. This was the crown prince that he chose against all opposition. This was the son that he had carefully cultivated for many years. This was the future monarch that he chose for the Yen kingdom. No need to eavesdrop. Come over, he said tiredly. The crown prince was stunned. What eavesdrop? What do you mean come over? What does father want to do? No, he wasn't his father emperor. His real father emperor was in the palace. Gu Chengfeng stepped into the room and grabbed the crown prince's collar. Go you. The conversation with the crown prince made the monarch's heart full of regret. He finally tasted the feeling of being betrayed by his loved ones. It was even worse than he had imagined. Shenyuan Li, if I hadn't betrayed you back then, but there was no if in this world. There were only consequences and results. The crown prince was brought to the woodshed. Gu Chengfeng found a rope and tied him up. The crown prince sat on the chair, unable to move his hands and feet. He looked coldly at Gu Jiao and Gu Chengfeng. What are you doing? Gu Chengfeng held the stick and smiled evilly. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_826/1060477788. HTML Genius memorized the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile reading website, m. zhbqg.com. Chapter 814. This book's newest chapter is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found online are all available here. Cold Palace. Han She was already resting in the east courtyard. Suddenly, a gerfalcon flew across the roof and crashed into her window frame. It dropped a small bamboo tube in its mouth and flapped its wings to fly away. Han She was woken up and called Su Gao, who was standing guard outside, to have him see what had happened to the window. Su Gao pushed open the window and saw a small bamboo tube on the ground. He went around to the yard and picked up the small bamboo tube. Nyong nyong, it's a bamboo tube. What's inside? Han She asked. Su Gao stretched out his arm and tried his best to hold the bamboo tube as far away as possible, ensuring that the tube's mouth and bottom were not facing him. He raised his orchid fingers and braced himself as he pulled off the cover of the bamboo tube. No hidden weapons flew out. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. It's a note, nyong nyong. Su Gao presented the note in the bamboo tube to Han She with both hands. After Han She saw it, she slammed her fist on the table. Damn it! They actually captured the crown prince. Su Gao took the note and looked at it. On it was written, "Tonight, at 1 a.m., meet at Baifeng Pavilion. Otherwise, the crown prince will lose his life." These chaotic words caused Su Gao's eyelids to bulge a few times. Nyong nyong, this might not be true. Su Gao said. Han She calmly said, "This one knows, so you should quickly go to the crown prince's palace and investigate the situation." Yes. Su Gao complied. Although Han She had been imprisoned in the cold palace, the current ruler was under her control. The guards guarding the palace gates had already been replaced with members of the Han family. It would not be difficult for her and her people to leave. What shocked Su Gao was that the crown prince really was not in the palace. Furthermore, the 10 brocade guards that the Crown Prince had brought out had all returned. They said that the Crown Prince had been kidnapped. After hearing Su Gao's report, Han Shi was so angry that the veins on her forehead popped. Prepare the carriage. At 1 a.m., Han Shi's carriage arrived at the agreed-upon location. Gu Jiao and Xiao Hang were already waiting in the pavilion. Seeing the imperial grandson and Xiao Lulang, Han Shi's eyes turned cold. It's you? Gu Jiao shrugged. Didn't An Hun tell you? I was the one who snatched the throne away from you. Of course An Hun told her, but Han Shi did not expect that the two of them would kidnap the Crown Prince in the middle of the night. She had knocked the monarch unconscious, and Xiao Lulang had come to snatch him away. The next day, she crowned the Crown Prince. That night, Xiao Lulang kidnapped the Crown Prince. Han Shi led Su Gao up the stairs. She gracefully and generously sat across from the two. She then looked at Xiao Hang and sneered, Ben Gong has not met such a fierce opponent in a long time. Shangguan Qing, you have made Ben Gong see you in a new light. Imperial consort, you flatter me. Xiao Hang calmly said, it's getting late. Ben Gong will save the small talk. Tonight, I invited Imperial Consort here to make a deal with Imperial Consort. Han Shi's eyes looked around. Xiao Hang faintly smiled. Imperial Consort, you don't need to look. The Crown Prince is not here. Imperial Consort, you don't need to think about stalling for time. Hope that the expert under you can find the Crown Prince. Han Shi narrowed her eyes. What deal do you want to make with Ben Gong? Xiao Hang said, hand over the fake monarch, and Ben Gong will return the Crown Prince to you. Han Shi said without hesitation, ha, dream on. Xiao Hang faintly said, Imperial Consort, are you not afraid that I will kill the Crown Prince? Han Shi threatened, if you kill the Crown Prince, Ben Gong will also kill the little princess in the palace. This should not be the result you want. Xiao Heng's eyes flashed with anger. Han Shi, you even dare to kill an innocent 4-year-old child. Aren't you being too cruel? Did you just find out that Ben Gong is cruel? Han Shi fearlessly looked at the two brats in front of her and sneered. To fight with Ben Gong, you guys are still too inexperienced. If you don't want anything to happen to the little princess, you better obediently send the Crown Prince back to Ben Gong. Originally, Xiao Hang and Gu Jiao's purpose was not to replace the fake monarch, but if they wanted to open a skylight in a room that did not allow light to pass through, they must first propose to tear down the roof. Gu Jiao raised her eyebrows and said, it's not hard for me to catch people. Send the Crown Prince back, you wish. It's you again, this brat from a lower country. Han Shi coldly looked at Gu Jiao. Her gaze suddenly became meaningful. In fact, what's so good about following the imperial grandson? What Shangguan Yan and the imperial grandson can give you, Ben Gong and the Crown Prince can give you even more. There is no harm in considering working under Ben Gong. Ben Gong will definitely not treat you unfairly. Is she trying to poach someone right in front of her? Han Shi was very optimistic about her own situation and was very confident. Gu Jiao curled her lips, raised her hand, and gently grabbed Xiao Heng's hand that was placed on the stone table. Then, under Han Shi's gaze that was as if she had seen a ghost, she slowly said, what I want is him. Can you give it to me? Han Shi felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Two grown men. Actually, offending public morals. She simply could not watch. Han Shi turned her face and coldly said, I'll give you the little princess. This is the biggest concession that Ben Gong can make. Otherwise, Ben Gong does not mind fighting to the death with you. She was very clear that Shangguan Qing would not really kill the Crown Prince. Because if he did, she would definitely kill the little princess. But Shangguan Qing should also be clear that she would definitely not hand over the monarch. The perfect balance between the two sides was to exchange the little princess for the Crown Prince. There could not be any more. Xiao Heng said, all right, you have people bring the little princess over. I will also have my people bring the Crown Prince over. Don't play any tricks. If more than 5 people come, I will kill the Crown Prince. This was to prevent Han She from bringing soldiers over to suppress them. Xiao Hang calmly and coldly said, "Either way, if we die, the little princess will probably not be able to survive in your hands. At worst, we will give the little princess a quick death before we die." It had to be said that Xiao Hang had considered everything. His words were also very convincing. If it really came to that point, whether or not he would kill the little princess was not important. It was good that Han She believed that he would do it. Han She had indeed planned to have people lead soldiers to surround and suppress them. Who would have thought that the other side would see through it once again? He was the same age as Royal Prince Ming, but he was able to calculate people to such a degree. The younger generation really would surpass the older. Han She quietly gave Su Gao a few instructions. Su Gao nodded and complied. "Yes, this servant will go and bring the little princess over." "What about the crown prince?" Han She asked Xiao Hang. Xiao Hang said, "When we see the little princess, we will naturally bring the crown prince over." 5:00. Su Gao led 3 people to 100 Maple Pavilion. One of them was an Han, and the other 2 were wet nurse and sleeping little princess. Gu Jiao held an Han in her bosom and sized him up. He was injured like that by Long Yi, but after 1 day and 1 night, he had almost recovered. Was this the effect of purple grass poison? His physique was truly very valiant. Gu Jiao whistled. Little Joe went to report. After a quarter of an hour, Long Yi carrying the crown prince arrived at 100 Maple Pavilion. An Han looked at Long Yi who had suddenly appeared, and killing intent appeared in his eyes. Han She wholeheartedly wanted to save the crown prince. She didn't want side issues to arise here. Most importantly, she didn't want to accidentally injure herself and the crown prince. "Can we exchange now?" she indifferently said. "First, let the little princess come over," Xiao Heng said. Han She hesitated for a bit, then nodded her head towards Wet Nurse. Wet Nurse carried the little princess and walked over. From the beginning, An Han stared at the back of Wet Nurse. If the other party refused to hand over the crown prince, he would kill both of them with a single palm. Fortunately, Xiao Hang didn't act shamelessly. Long Yi, give the crown prince to them. Long Yi threw the crown prince in disgust. An Han caught the crown prince. "Let's go," Xiao Heng said. Both sides didn't fight. First, both sides were evenly matched. Second, both sides didn't want to accidentally injure each other's people. After Xiao Heng's group left, the crown prince sat on the stool and covered his swollen face. With tears streaming down his face, he complained, "Imperial Mother, they bullied me intolerably." Han She looked at her son who was beaten black and blue. She felt as if her heart was being cut by a knife. She raised her hand and carefully held her son's face. Disgraceful. They actually injured my son like this. My son, you can rest assured. Imperial Mother will definitely seek justice for you. But, thinking of something, Han She asked again, "How did you leave the mansion?" The crown prince took out the note from his bosom. "When I received this note, I thought it was you, Imperial Mother, looking for me." Han She took the note and looked. It was her handwriting. She remembered the matter of Yen Shang technique. That letter she found had exactly the same handwriting. Han She thoughtfully said, "It seems that the other side has an expert who can mix up handwriting. But didn't I ask Su Gao to remind you not to come to the cold palace to find me if there is nothing? Why would I take the initiative to find you? How did you fall for it?" The crown prince said with shame, This son was careless for a moment." Han She coldly snorted, "I think you became the crown prince again and lost your sense of measure." The crown prince lowered his head and didn't say anything. Han She said again, "After they caught you, what did they say to you?" The crown prince hesitantly said, "They said, Imperial Mother is plotting a rebellion. The imperial father in the palace is a fake imperial father." Han She slapped the table. "Nonsense. Don't fall for their evil scheme." The crown prince quickly said, "This son was also thinking this." Han She opened her mouth and wanted to say something but stopped. She sighed and said, "All right, With your injuries like this, quickly go back to the manor and find an imperial physician to take a look. Also, with your injuries like this, you most likely won't be able to attend court. Just rest in the manor for the next few days." The crown prince looked at her and asked, "Then can this son go visit imperial mother?" Han Shi thought a bit, then said, "It's best if you don't. In the next few days, the palace is not peaceful. Don't come to the cold palace to find me for now." The crown prince said, "Then can this son go visit imperial father?" This son has just been conferred the title of crown prince and hasn't had a chance to enter the palace to thank imperial father. Han Shi pondered for a moment, then said, "Wait until your imperial father has left court before you go and thank him." "But your injuries?" The crown prince smiled and said, "This small injury is not a problem. Moreover, the more injured I am, the more I will not forget to thank him." "Wouldn't that move imperial father even more?" Han Shi thought to herself, that was a fake imperial father. What would he be moved for? But the art of saving face was for the entire world to see. It was true that he could not slack off. After Han Shi sent the crown prince back to his manor, she sat in a carriage and returned to the imperial palace. The crown prince called for a guard and impatiently said, "Where is the lantern? Don't you know how to light it?" "Yes." The guard quickly lit the lantern in front to light the way. The crown prince returned to his own courtyard and pushed open a door that was left ajar. The guard asked, "Your Highness, are you going to the study?" The crown prince paused. "It's almost dawn. I should not go to the study to work. Return to the room. Be careful." The guard held the lantern and walked in front. After arriving at the upper room, he gently pushed open the door and respectfully bowed. "Your Highness, should I call a doctor for you?" The crown prince placed his hands behind his back and turned around to look at him, saying, "No need. There is no need to make such a big fuss over such a small injury. Go rest. Don't wake me up in the morning." The guard was stunned. Yes. Strange. Did the crown prince suddenly want to sleep in the morning? That's right. He was old and had come back injured. His body would not be able to handle it. The guard held the lantern and retreated. The crown prince closed the door and locked it. He walked back and forth in the exquisite and luxurious room. He grabbed a juicy big peach on the table and took a bite. "Is this where the crown prince lives?" The crown prince. To be exact, it was Gu Changfeng. After Gu Changfeng finished muttering, he immediately exclaimed in surprise and looked at the peach in his hand. "Even the peach is so sweet." To be able to eat iced fresh and sweet fruits in the middle of the night, the crown prince of Great Yen Kingdom really knew how to enjoy life. Gu Changfeng fell onto the bed. That soft and bouncy feeling almost made him scream out in pleasure. He kicked off his shoes and held the peach in one hand. The other hand was behind his head. He crossed his legs again. As he shook his feet and chewed on the peach, he proudly snorted, "That stupid woman Han Shi. She must still be smug that she is an expert negotiator. She only used a small imperial daughter to exchange for her crown prince. She didn't expect that the one she exchanged for was actually you, Master Feng. This is called giving someone a taste of their own medicine." Thinking of his performance in the pavilion, he sat up and said with incomparable infatuation, "My acting is so good that I even fooled my own mother, Madam Han. As expected of me." Digression. It's very late. I'm going to sleep first. During the day, I'll update everyone. While I'm at it, I'll ask for a wave of monthly votes. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642-82642-826/1060465117. HTML Genius remembers this site's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion Mobile Reading Website. ZHHBQG. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.